So welcome to the San Mateo County Coastside Design Review Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, October 10th, 2024, and it is now 12:33 p.m. So this hearing consists of two projects and is being audio recorded. For better recording quality and the orderliness of the meeting, please put your phones on silent, avoid side conversations in the audience, and wait for my prompt before speaking. There are two opportunities for the public to speak, including a public comment period for matters not on the agenda, and a separate public comment session for each project on the agenda. For the fairness and orderliness of this meeting, please limit your speech to 3 minutes or less. You'll be respectfully asked to stop speaking after 3 minutes. The Design Review Committee's decision for items 2 and 3 today, if any, will only be in the form of a recommendation regarding project compliance with design review guidelines and standards, and not the final decision on the project, which will be taken at a later date. The CDRC does not review matters related to zoning standards, local coastal policies, or the general plan, and will only review projects based on the design review guidelines and standards. So for example, concerns regarding a possible impact on the environment or parking compliance would not be addressed in this meeting. Again, the CDRC only reviews the design and architectural aspect of projects based on the design review guidelines and standards. So with that, I will move to the roll call. Mark Stagmeyer. Here. John Stedman. Here. Julian Martinez. April Bingham.
Here.
Moshi Porter.
Here.
Mark Dean. Here. James Bennington.
Here.
And with that, we'll move on to chairperson's report. Is there a chair report for this meeting?
Yeah, came in late, so it's not much of one because we're mostly meeting as opposed to the report. Sorry, I just gotta put on the well, anyway, the Coastside Design Review Committee, CRDC, is appointed from the Board of Supervisors to ensure that new developments is compatible with the physical setting and the site and the visual character of the neighborhood, and provide a platform for neighborhood residents to communicate their concerns for the communities of Montero, Moss Beach, Algramado, Miramar, and Princeton. So the old business, basically, we always start out with the same thing about demonstration of scale. And so probably forego this half a page and a half of the things that we collected. Go to one question is on the CEQA that we kind of breezed over once before, and maybe you can answer. We were sort of asked to review some CEQA before, and personally, I don't remember where it ended with the CEQA, because we said we weren't educated in CEQA, but then it's on there from time to time and it just gets passed by. So
yeah,
can you remind me of what?
Yeah, I think where we landed with this is part of the design review, or part of the design review permit is that there's like a checkbox there for CEQA. And I felt like a working compromise for us was that we could put something in our write-up that would say that we concur with staff's review of CEQA.
And why did it even fall on us at all?
What's that?
Why does it fall on us at all? Why is, what's the?
You're the decision maker, so you wouldn't have to make the CEQA finding for a recommendation when there's another permit associated, like a CDP or grading permit. But when it's just a design review permit and you are the decision maker, you know, per the California Environmental Quality Act, you have to make a finding that it's exempt from CEQA under a particular class. So we would put that in a decision letter, but what county attorney advised us of is they want it in your decision.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
yeah, like,
Our decision, but not our decision.
Like-
Lose,
you know, as a part of your decision.
because it's part of the environment.
I get it, Camille. Can I just respectfully ask? CEQA, as far as I'm concerned, is outside the realm of our sphere of influence. Why are we even involved in that process?
It's kind of like zoning, where it's like, you know how you guys aren't like involved, like, we'll do the zoning check and bring it to you. Well,
Right.
we do the CEQA check and bring it to you, but we just need you to actively
Right,
include.
But why? Just why? Like,
Because you're the decision maker.
no, we're not. We can't deny a project based on CEQA. How are we,
Educated.
how are we involved in
Same with
that?
zoning. It's the same thing.
We can say this doesn't, in my view, this doesn't meet CEQA and we can stop a project.
your purview is design review, but you're making a
Right.
decision.
I'm not trying to be obstruct,
No, I know you're not.
Can I try saying it in a different way?
Yeah.
Is it just because we're at the end of the line?
Yeah.
Because, okay, so it's that we just agree that it's been done. And we, just like we do with zoning, right? They've already made a zoning decision. They said it either meets zoning regulations or it doesn't meet zoning regulations. But because they come to this body after they've done the zoning, then we are just the end of the line.
But what if, like John said, what if, for instance, if we see something that we don't think is that they should have approved or disapproved, and we want to go the other way?
Well,
We have that option if we're not educated, but you can't educate yourself because it's.
I think you could, because those are required findings for your decision. So what we can do is, since you guys say you don't have the background in SQL or whatever, we can do a training of I would say, common exemption classes for SQL. I don't know if you recall this, but the CDRC actually reviewed a project that wasn't exempt from SQL and actually had to make like findings on the neg deck, which were a little more complicated. So we provided a training when you have that project. Like this neg deck here is not, thankfully, you're not the decision maker on it because it has a separate permit. But should it have been your decision, then we would have given you a little more like guidance on the neg deck and making those specific findings. But the exemption classes for SQL are pretty, they're always the same ones. And they either fit or don't, and
Camille, what I'm just gonna say, the farthest that I feel like I can comfortably say in a letter is that we will concur with staff's
Yeah.
findings on CEQA.
okay.
And, you know, I mean, we can get educated, but in terms of being, you know, comfortable weighing in on environmental issues, I don't feel that that's something that's, we can do with.
You can direct staff to look into it further and have them come back.
Yeah.
I guess you could do something like that.
I'm
If
gonna
you're
kinda-
comfortable with making that finding.
but we don't actually weigh in on design issues either. Like, let me be direct here. All we do is agree that it meets the regulations or it doesn't meet what is documented. That's the only thing we do. We say it does or it
That's
doesn't.
not true.
I feel like it's the guidelines, right?
Yeah.
We're which are gonna be changing, but at the same time, the guidelines are something that we are tasked with. Forcing, so. I guess I don't get your point about this one.
I mean, you don't have to have a design degree to sit on this board.
Yeah, but
Right.
That's
We're-
true.
we're
Don't you need a
representing the-
CEQA degree?
That's
we're
my-
representing the community though, right? That's why the architects are on board. There, I mean, I feel like that's the. Reasons why they're kind of digging into more the design aspect.
Understanding for that. So anyway, I do have the SQL book. Link on this page, if you ever want to look at it, it's like 800 pages of everything.
There's really only 2 pages you need to look at, and then, maybe what we can
Only have to
do,
look at two.
most projects, for 90% of all projects, not even 98%. So what we can do is just give you like a 15-minute, 20-minute overview, we don't call it training, overview at the next meeting of like typical classes of exemptions. And give you maybe some examples of some projects that wouldn't be exempt.
No,
So, we do that.
that'd be nice, okay.
We'll do
I'm
that.
okay with that.
Yeah, and it's just, we'll give you 2 pages.
Okay. Other than that, that's it. And so I went to open for public comment.
Okay. So we're now opening the public comment for matters not on the agenda. So for those attending this meeting in person, speaker forms are available on the back wall near the entrance. Please provide me with your speaker forms as soon as you can. And for those on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature to raise your hand to speak. And for those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand, and pressing *6 will unmute and mute your microphone. And when you hear your name or the last 4 digits of your phone number called, I will prompt you to come up to the front or unmute your account and inform you that you may begin speaking. Please state your name, address, and email address for the record. So I do have no speaker slips for those in person for matters not on the agenda. And I will give a couple seconds for those on Zoom in case there's someone that wishes to speak. Please use the raise hand feature to indicate your desire to speak. Okay, seeing none, Chair, please indicate if you would like to close the public comment.
Close public comment, please.
Okay. And we will wait 2 minutes until 12:45 to start the item number 1, scheduled for 12:45 on story poll
I
discussion.
have a sort of a technical question about that. I was looking at, when, when I go back and look at the videos, it's, people be talking and discussing things, but it's still, it stays on a page. Whatever page was the last page, and then we moved on to other conversations, and it just, can it be automatic that that machine will just start focusing on people that are speaking and get off of the page that would be on?
So at the moment, we are not, due to the type of internet we have here, we are not doing the video recording, just audio recording. Yeah, when we turn on the video, it sort of compromises the whole audio recording as well.
That takes care of that.
Yeah.
Are you all here for item 3?
There for sure. Oh, you're
Yeah.
for item.
We have a meeting for an item on the agenda.
That's a 2:30.
But they can also speak on Thursday. If they want.
Hey, yes, just. Oh, cool.
Okay,
Following, but, right?
That'd be good. The developer, architect side.
What?
so it is 12:45, so we can move on to item number 1, story poll discussion. So Camille or Chair?
I think Mark was going to be there.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Just logistically or administratively. Are we starting with public comment or discussion and public comment?
Typically it's discussion and public comment, but feel free to, if you'd like to open
Okay.
up public comment as well.
I guess we can start with discussion because I'm
Okay.
gonna guess public comment may want to have feedback on what we say. So.
Okay.
Did these come to you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I guess, guys, just to kind of frame the discussion, maybe you'll start with a little bit of background and then, options for us as a committee, and then, open the floor for I think a pretty, hopefully robust discussion. The current ordinance, which was modified, I'm sorry, not ordinance, but policy, which was modified July 2024, requires that projects that come in front of the design review committee present a demonstration of project scale. And I think the recommended requirement to demonstrate project scale is to do story polls. But there's also an option to, instead of doing story polls, to visually represent the project via a poster board that's published on the site, as well as basically views. There's requirements on presenting views of the property, 2D views of the property from adjoining properties. So that's the current policy that's in place right now. And as you guys know, there's been a number of projects that have come forth that either have not used the 2D renderings and have provided 3D renderings, or in fact have not, or as the public has pointed out, has not maybe accurately represented the project within the drawings. In addition to that, we've had some issues as well with postings and the amount of time that the postings have been put in place for community engagement, if you will. This matter has come up in front of the committees, usually typically through a project, but also I think there's been discussions that former committee members have had, including Katie over there, I see. So this is a long-running topic at hand. So I think really to kind of drive this discussion as well, I think we want to look at what options are available for us as a committee to take. We don't have the authority to require story polls, but I do think that, you know, there are things that we can do to, for instance, point out to our elected officials that this needs to be done. So anyhow, I want to pause there and I guess open up the floor for this discussion. One thing I do want to frame the discussion in though is there's a perspective of the neighbors and the, you know, and how this project is, or how a project's going to impact them. But there's also the perspective of folks building on the coast. You know, there's a housing element here. We want to encourage, you know, additional housing in the community, and what implications a requirement for building story poles may have on these projects, both from a cost and also time perspective. So I'll pause there and open up the floor.
I'll speak, because I'm gonna go back to 2019, when we worked hard at the city on this. Where we had gotten it to a point where it was just gonna go through the Board of Supervisor, or the planning commission at that time, and that was 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, when we included, and it sort of just completely disappeared, and I don't think that it should start all over again. We have notes on all of that, and it was gonna be proposed to the commission that to be accepted as story poles as we had designed, Katie included, that were minimal. They weren't like a full projection of the whole house. It was just the high points with just a tape measure to the high point and down tape to the thing for another $20. I don't think that in this economy that $2,000 to $5,000 makes a huge difference on the construction of a house. And so I think that that shouldn't even be part of it. The people need to see I believe that people need to see what's going on. I'm a builder and I put up story poles all the time. Or all the time, I don't build that much anymore, but you want the people that you're next to know what's going on. And there's nothing to hide. It's what you're gonna put up. I think it brings about good neighborly relationships. You know, when you do it and everybody knows what's up, you're not surprised and simply like, oh my God, you're still going up another floor or whatever. So that's my opinion. I don't think that it needs to start all over. We don't need to redesign everything that we've already gotten done. We probably spend 30 or 40 hours doing it.
Actually, Katie has, she sent at noon and I passed it all to you. She sent notes from that time.
The prior discussion, yeah, and we can parking lot this now, or I would like the folks from the county, like Emil, who's and Randy, could maybe talk about what happened with that process, right? Like it's 2019. You know, did that just result in this policy update, or is there, you know, what happened there? So but I don't want to cut you off.
No, you're not, and I don't mind, because I'm just basically done, but I think I brought it up to county like in April, when I was down there, and maybe it popped its head up after that. And then we also, Camille and I, we talked about it in here about saying in the spring, wondered what happened to it.
Yeah, so in 2020, I think we had, COVID shutdown too. But, we had at the time, our long range planning department had, a set work plan. We explained this at the time, but, the set work plan, we were working on, I think, getting our housing element passed. There was other things, the Coastside transportation plan, was a hot topic. We were like engaging with the public,
We had lost all these.
at a high level. I mean, just, it would have broad, importance to the community, and we thought that at that time, it was kind of bad timing to then start another community engagement effort, because we wanted to do a broader community engagement effort before we brought it to the planning commission, which you would do for anyone, really. So, we thought that it would conflict with the transportation plan that was like a hot topic at that time. So it was considered like, I guess, lower priority by our long range department to start that, community engagement, that we do for any ordinance. So it was kind of backburnered
Mhm.
and, largely a state back burner. I think we're still working on the housing element. I think the transportation project is done. But the long range planning section still has few planners and lots of projects. Lots of ordinances that have their own, like, say, state mandates, so reasons for raising to a higher priority and focusing on. So it's always stayed sort of low level. However, I updated the CDRC a month or so ago that SB 35 is going to be effective on the coast. Meeting in January, needing us to work on objective design standards. So as we're taking a look at the design review regulations where all these, story poles that's the ordinance that you would amend in order to require story poles. So as we're kind of digging into this and making, more objective design standards, essentially for SB 35, we cannot, enforce any subjective standards, only the objective standards will apply. And a lot of our standards are subjective. So we're kind of right now in a focused effort to come up with objective standards based on the standards that we have, as well as adding some more like form-based standards based on also our previous discussions. So at that, as we've opened up the design review regulations, we can incorporate the input from this story poll discussion. It's actually very good timing. I talked to Steve Monowitz, our director, and he's willing to insert into our draft update of the ordinance what comes out of these discussions, and of course with his approval. So it is very good timing, it's time to work. And it will be very valuable to collect your input and to relook at the notes from sessions with them.
Can I ask a quick question? Seems to me, assuming, is everyone here in favor of adding story poles, or do we know what everyone's position is?
Yeah, I think we still need to,
I think we need to establish
to
that.
establish that.
It's being spoken of as if it's a given at this moment.
Yeah, and then I think we can look at avenues for which we as a committee, either write to the planning department.
Right.
Or to the.
Let's say demonstration of scale. I mean, it would be, let's just keep it demonstration of scale. It would be a good time to codify
Right,
any
Position.
requirements
Right.
regarding demonstration of scale and not keep it in like a policy format we have.
Right.
But no, it's open.
Okay. I just,
Sorry,
because,
that makes sense.
And I wanna add something, because I think to that point, I'm not necessarily for a story pole. And I would say I'm not for it because I am concerned about adding more bureaucracy to building on the coast when we have a serious housing shortage. And I recognize that what will happen is more people will find more loopholes, like they are with ADUs, to do what they need to do. Now we see ADUs coming to us as second stories, right? With no requirement for demonstration of scale and no review whatsoever. And that will continue to happen as long as the bureaucracy level remains as high as it is. So I'm for reducing the bureaucratic load to build. So what does that mean? That means that if we can have an open conversation about what are the minimum requirements that we can all agree to go into this new update, then I think that's the pragmatic approach. Because right now there is a lot that is in the Coastside Design Review standards that I'm sure many of us around the table feel like, well, does that really matter? And then there are things in there that we think do really matter. So I think if we could have a broader conversation about what matters to the residents here on the coast, and I think demonstration of scale is one of the key criteria, probably more important than the housing color. But because we spend time on every single aspect, and are asked to weigh in on every single one of those aspects, it on top becomes another barrier to achieving housing goals on the coast. And what I'm afraid of is that, again, people will find the loopholes because they're doing it now, and we see that with ADUs.
That ADU on the second story happened right away.
Yes.
Immediately.
Immediately.
And it's like, it was like, you couldn't do anything about it. That should be addressed, but it doesn't. And you can't, because it came from the state.
That's right, and so, and
So I
that's
don't
what
see
the
where-
new regulation from the state is gonna do, right? That new.
We don't need to talk about ADUs.
Well, to be fair, these regulations are coming out of the state regarding objective versus subjective standards, because municipalities are using subjective standards to support the building process.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the state is mandating that stop because it's thwarting housing. And
It's not
creating,
as fair as objective standards. Or it's clear.
Yes,
I can't see where anything's ever stopped any housing. Ever seen any residential housing get stopped? Stop.
I think we need to go there. I think we should stay on that
Look at the
demonstration.
foundation up here, Mark, it's been there for 25 years.
Oh, that was financially.
Let's just stay on top.
yeah, let's stay on topic, because I think
I
there
think that
are a
is,
few we
you
can.
just said, it's doing all this.
It's delaying.
stopping
There's
all
some
this building,
delay,
and
so
it's not.
it's this discretionary process where it's like, it's up to someone's opinion whether it does or doesn't meet the standard. Where it's subject to appeal. These are the steps of a discretionary process. The state wants more ministerial review for housing, like for SB 35, just be ministerial, it's at no one's discretion.
That's right.
So discretion can delay, and I don't think that's a new concept to most of us, that discretion can
So,
delay.
so April, I'd like to dig in a little bit to the, the bureaucratic process that, inhibits housing. Do you feel that requiring story poles and the cost associated with that and the time and effort, has played a significant factor or will play a significant factor in this process?
I think it's just one more thing. I think if it was,
In death by 1,000 cuts.
it's death by 1,000 cuts, and so it's more about wanting to protect individuals from that death by 1,000 cuts, not necessarily an objective issue of story poles. I think what a pragmatic approach is, what else could we remove that's part of that 1,000 cuts, but put story poles in place? Because as a resident, I would like story poles personally, right? If somebody builds in front of my house, I'd love to see a story pole. I have a hard time visualizing the scale when somebody tells me it's 28 feet high. I mean, I don't see that, right? So I would love to have a story pole personally.
Yeah, and as a community member,
Yeah.
I think we've gotten used to the point of reading plans. A lot of folks haven't, and I think that's probably one of the barriers too. You post a set of drawings up, a community member, when they see the story poles, I think that provides a very real in place, representation, but.
Yeah. So I'm not against story poles. I'm just against adding it on top
And not taking something away.
and not taking something away, not removing something.
Let's take the hearing away if they put story poles.
If the what?
If they meet the checklist at the county and they have story poles, they don't have to come to the hearing.
I'm all for that.
Wasn't the hearing to take comment, and if the neighbors have comment on the story poles, and what would
Then
they?
they can appeal.
Well,
But it's not a horrible idea.
Look at Redwood City. That's the way they do it.
Yeah.
This is like a staff level, we'll just taking all the
Staff level.
paper
You
comments,
do all
nobody
the
actually
things.
talks to anybody.
If they don't, right, if
Read
there's
all
an
the
appeal, then
comments.
there's appeal, and then they go to a hearing. But I mean, that's what we're here about, stopping all the hearings for the planning commission. I mean, I know that's right, that's what,
No, that's just for
Basically.
projects that qualify for SB, that's the affordable housing project, SB 35. ADUs would be reviewed against the objective standards, it's all these ABs and SBs types of projects that require a ministerial process that would use the objective standards. But also we would want to improve the fairness and clarity of the standards for the people who do have to go through the discretionary process.
I think that'll hopefully help streamline, the process so there's less subjectivity, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, not to jump too far ahead, but I mean, one note I captured was, James's comment about timing. Is that something you wanna?
Yeah, you know, there's a couple of things. You know, we've had some examples come before this board where the interaction between the neighbors and the person that's wanting to build a home has been valuable. I can think of that one recently where there's a 5 foot setback on either side, and the windows in the garage and the windows in the room up above looking into the neighbor's bedroom. Those are things that, you know, we fix, that we try to help it smooth out so that the community and the builder can both have a better experience. So I'm all for the story buildings. There's been a number of times, not just this last time, but there's been a couple of times in the past where people say we don't get enough notification. So we were talking about that earlier, because a little bit, what the history of that is. I think they're both important. We don't need to increase the story polls period, but maybe some way to make sure people get notification, see those storyboards. I mean, those are things that we should fix. Those are reasonable concerns. And I like the idea of interaction between the neighbors and the new builder. And yeah, the person that's been paying 20 years on a lot or whatever circumstances, and you've heard stories like that, they have rights too. But it's a two-way street, and that's what we're here for.
Any additional feedback? I was gonna switch to what options are under our purview now.
Well, I would like to say, just for the record, I am against story poles. I always have been. And I'm happy to expound on my thinking about it. But to Mark's point, I don't know that story poles have ever stopped the building. But I know that they've been used as a means to delay and hammer people. And I don't like the concept of story poles. Quite frankly, the design review committee has gone beyond its original scope. And just for you to all know, I've been here on the coast since 1966. I'm a lifetime resident. My family's here. I raised my children here. And I went to the original meetings at the El Granada School multipurpose room when this concept was hatched. They had input. And it started out simply as a way for the community to ensure that hideous, ugly, boxy projects didn't get built. And it has taken on a much more focused purpose, to the point of where's your front door design? What color are your gutters? This micromanaging of people's projects. And to me, we bring in government to administer a universal set of rules that we all abide by, like speed limits. We have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit that's implied in a residential neighborhood. And if we brought every person that moved to the coast in and said, okay, the street limit is 25, but we're gonna look at your circumstance, you may be required to drive at different speed. I feel like people come in, they buy a couple comes in, buys a lot. They look at the regulations, they take it to an architect, they design to the best of their ability using the design review guidelines, the plan guidelines, and they submit a project. They get to this point, and then the secret rules come out. Oh, it's 28 feet, but we really want it to be 26. We want you to move this, we want you to move that. We do this, we do this, we do this, we do this. And it just feels, this is feedback from me going through the process, as well as people that I've worked with, people that I know as neighbors. It feels inequitable to a lot of people that experience the process on both sides. And I personally feel, well, I personally feel that story poles are an added expense that don't provide an accurate representation. For most people, they're not able to interpret what a building's gonna look like from some plastic netting and 2x4s. It's just an expense and a delay. And if they're put up in the winter, they blow over and land on your neighbor's yard. They lay all over the street. They have to be thrown away. They're a waste of time and effort to me. I do not support them. I think a quality color rendering is a much better representation of what's gonna be shown in the neighborhood. Personally.
Any thoughts, counterpoints? We can-
I think that the CDRC has come a long way since, I mean, it's come a long way in the last 2
It has,
years. It's
it
like,
has, it
people
has.
usually leave here approved.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
there's
it has, I
hardly,
agree.
yeah, I mean, it's
I
like,
agree.
and I don't think anybody, we don't think everybody, well, they do pick on some of the colors, but. I think it's come, you know, it's changed a lot.
Right.
And that's, but people aren't, they don't get the notification, I mean, they don't get it. People are in their own world, they come home, they get in their kayak with somebody, they don't know to look around, I mean, they see the orange things, I don't particularly like that design either, but. If it's up, they look, they know to, you know, there's a neighbor coming, somebody is gonna build, otherwise they don't pay attention to a little plaque like that. And the tractors show up and whatever, it's just, like Jim said, you don't even know, you might be on vacation, lucky enough to take a couple of weeks off in a row. You come back and it's all passed through already.
Right.
So,
But to that point, Mark, I mean, maybe you know this, people that are not unhappy usually don't show up at meetings.
well,
So-
right, well, that's why I was saying that before, but I, you know, like story poles, I can go for story poles up in 2 hours, you know. It is not, the way we have it now, it's like ridge line and 2 hot lines or whatever, and something around the ground, it's like. It
Yeah, the
doesn't
estimate I
take.
got was 10 grand though. 10 grand.
I'll do those, whenever you get those.
Mark, you can do it in 2 hours. I'll be calling you to do it. Now,
They may not be, no.
It's
Does
not
the
that,
price vary?
you measure
I think
28
prices
feet
are
on a stick
increasing.
and you put it up 2 places.
Does the price vary? Is it, because I've heard 10 grand a lot, like.
10 grand.
that's
10
like-
grand.
So,
Well, if they're doing, like, we don't do that anymore. We have a ridge line and 2, like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
you
mean-
call somebody, you just like Google story poles and then you call the
well, then
first
you
5 people that come up to build you your story poles, they're gonna quote you 10 grand.
Yeah, and Mark, and honestly, I mean, you're right, but pretend you're Joe,
That's what
Joe
I am.
homeowner guy coming in, right?
right.
Right? And
Same thing
you're
as the
exactly right, because I did it just to see. I
Yes,
called 2 story pole companies, it's 8 to 10,000.
yeah.
Well, one thing I want to point out is I don't feel like there's a project that we've seen that's under $1 million for construction. I mean, it's, you know, I know it's a death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, let's
It's not
game out,
15, yeah.
let's game out what happens with story poles, right? You put up a story pole, neighbor's gonna always say too big, right? That's, I mean, I'm feeling that's, we all know that's gonna happen, that's an option. But I also feel like it's an avenue or an opportunity for that discussion to happen, so the neighbors go through it, like, they don't feel like this project's coming in sideways or being, you know, snuck in, if you will. It's a way to have that direct communication with the neighbors. But yeah, are the neighbors gonna not be happy about two-story building? Always. I feel like that's not gonna be, or they, you know, if they're happy, they don't come to the meeting and.
Well,
Have
I
this
hear
discussion.
you, and I understand on you look at $1 million project, oh, 10,000 doesn't sound like that much. But I would be curious, we put in a policy, said, okay, we'll require story poles, people that want them can sign up. And we're gonna split the cost. The person building will pay half, and if you guys want story poles, you can cover the other half. Would anyone be willing to pay?
That's what I was gonna suggest last week.
Yeah. Would anyone be willing to actually pay for that?
Yeah.
People tell me all the time, oh, it's only so much, I'm like, give me $20 out of your pocket, what, you're crazy. It's very easy to be spending with someone else's money.
You know, this discussion shouldn't be about the cost of the story poles. It's about making sure that we communicate to the neighbors what's going on.
Mhm.
And so it's as simple as that. Let everybody have their say and weigh in. And yes, sometimes it gets ugly. Sometimes it gets pushed back a month or 2. But we end up with a better result when everybody has a chance to discuss.
See, I hear you, I understand what you're saying. But why do we have planning guidelines? If everybody needs to have a say, then why don't we just bring in whatever we want and everyone decides it's okay?
It's not a flat subdivision sort of thing, it's everything's.
Right, but I mean,
Okay, I'll answer your question. I've got a home on this hill, a 1-story home with a $1 million view. And you build a 3-story house in front of it, all right? Without any consideration from me. now we're open for lawsuits, all kinds of stuff. Just, you understand?
I
And that is the
understand.
current process, that we allow for public comment, we allow for public hearing, so.
I
It's not
understand.
the topic of.
So the adequate notification. Clear and concise, notification of what we're providing or what we're doing or what the builders do. Those things are essential.
Well, my issue is not to, my issue is not to burden neighbors, create problems. It's to standardize the process. So you're not creating a mystery where someone comes into this process and sits in this room with something that meets every piece of paper they can find. And then are faced with, you're gonna have to redo your whole thing. You're gonna have to drop your ridge line and change this and do this and change that.
doesn't happen.
It does happen.
That's not what we're talking about, John, like,
Yeah.
they're saying, they would, like, say that the pro story poll people are saying, well, let's just require it every time. Isn't that less guesswork? Isn't that more like procedural and fair, perhaps? But I mean, it's important to clarify it as regulation versus policy, and right now, currently, it's kind of like, oh, there's all these options, and nobody knows what to expect, and everyone's mad if the person doesn't choose story polls. So, I mean, we're kind of, I mean, that's the point of this discussion, is to kind of like make the process a little more consistent.
Yeah, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here and also say, could story polls actually be a benefit for the owners? And that I mean, I think a lot of what we do here is try to find equitable, well, okay, I'm not gonna use that word. We're trying to find some way of bridging the gap between the community members and the house. It's not gonna always happen, right? Your views are not protected. There's a lot of other things that we just can't do and are outside of our purview, traffic, parking, all this other stuff. But at the same time, maybe the story polls, can, and just the objectivity of it can allow for that homeowner to feel like, hey, I'm showing you what I'm doing. And I think we as a committee just need to be aware that, yeah, the first reaction from neighbors is always gonna be too big, right?
Yeah.
And is an issue, but I feel like I'm advocating for it just from the perspective of that. I think it helps the process and it creates a lot less animosity about, potentially trying to dodge, notification, if you will.
Right. I understand, and I actually say, I like Mark's idea. I much prefer incentivizing rather than, right? Hey, if you do story polls, here's your shortcut, or the county's gonna give you a discount on your fees, you won't have to pay our legal defense. Let's find some incentive for people to do it, rather than make it a requirement that's used as a punishment.
Or, I like Mark's idea, if you do story polls, you don't have to come to this hearing.
Right, whatever, some incentivization rather than making it an additional burden, make it an incentive, make it something that someone says, hey, if I do these, there's a benefit for me.
I mean, is that something that we can then kind of encapsulate, if we do agree on, writing a recommendation, or whatever that is, right? Is that we understand the nature or the resource that's required to do story polls, and therefore we recommend, a series of incentives potentially.
Right.
It might be different than like what we were trying to do, because this did change. I mean, you always thought you had to have historic polls. I always thought we had to have historic polls built 4 years ago, when we said,
Right.
somebody came up with it. I can't even find it right anymore, but we said, that the committee will, can say, you haven't demonstrated enough, all these people in the community want the story polls. So you need to put them up, and they haven't gone up anyway, and then it's just, so they play the waiting game or whatever, and it just goes through. I think that I really like the idea, because I was thinking of it, the last complaint thing that was going on in El Granada here. That the people, there was a lot of them, if they all kicked in $1,000, it'd be their story poll,
Right.
because they're the ones that think they're gonna lose their view, so.
Right,
I mean, it would be nice, but that's not gonna happen.
no, it's not.
I think shaving off the hearing is dangerous too, because it's like, if someone designs like a horrendous box, you're gonna see a story poll with a box. And then it does need the discussion of the CDRC, it does need help
Yeah,
complying with
I
the
know.
standards.
I don't
Just
think
because the
that's too
story
far.
polls doesn't mean it was standards, so.
I think the
But-
county could pay for it and then we'd be all set.
You know, I think the incentive is you're more likely to get passed at this meeting. I mean, you know, at some point.
Well, that's
yeah,
true.
We can.
I think more likely, I think a lot of neighbors will actually switch to, like specific issues with the design instead of just like all this energy against.
Yeah, if you're hiding your project there, I didn't get notified.
Yeah, it
I am-
just,
I
it
guess
kind of
that's right.
just
I mean, I think,
concentrates constructive comments.
right, overall, I think it will help. It would certainly help the people on this.
So I have a question. We talked about the rules about how far we can extend out the requirement in terms of notification. And you said something about that. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, I think we can touch on that, and we've kind of like put a list of like the salient issues, but I do think we should open up for public comments so that we can like
Yeah.
see what other salient issues are salient to the
Yeah,
public.
I was just thinking of like a process check that,
Okay. We still have some time.
yeah, because our next item is at 2:30.
Yeah,
I was just,
it will help us define like sort of the issues that we should discuss within this. But to James's point, he was saying that, for the last meeting, there was an item where people were on vacation, didn't get the notice, people didn't feel that they were given enough time to do the research that was necessary to properly comment on the project. So James was suggesting maybe 30 days instead of the 10-day notice period, but I was telling James that it's 10 days across the board regardless of the, permit type. Design review permit is one of many county permits. And then not only that, but we have a 30-day, we essentially have a 30-day, prep time for an item on the agenda. This would take it to a 2-month prep time. So any project would have to be ready like 2 months in advance to make it onto agenda, like get all your review sign-offs and stuff like that. Which, you know, it's, it'll be hard, it'll basically push the meeting out for them another
Yeah.
month. So that's the problem that I see there, and you can still get the people who still say, you know, I was on vacation. And, you know, mail's always gonna be hard copy, it's not gonna be email for a while, I don't think the post office is changing that anytime soon. So it's kind of like, you know, people are gonna check their PO boxes, and people are gonna be on vacation for 2 months, and it's like, there's no way to really address that.
Well, yeah, what happened the last time was it had something to do with the holiday and the 10-day period didn't get met. And so maybe we can just ask the county to say, hey, let's mail this out 10 days ahead of the required period so that we know it gets to the piece.
that is the requirement. Right now.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
what we can do is, I think we have more say, not over the mailed notice, but over the poster notice. So I know a lot of people use the story polls as a notice to the community.
Right.
We also have that sign, you know, the agenda sign, that maybe we wouldn't have the agenda number or whatever, but at least people would know that like, okay, this is upcoming, like.
You know,
Is it alternative to mailing would be to post the sign earlier? Is that what we're-
Yeah, as an alternative to what
Yeah.
you're saying, to get people like, okay, something's coming up on this, like keep an eye. look at
Anything
this.
that we can do to take that out of the concern
Yeah.
of this body or the.
yeah, and Camille, I think what you're addressing is that, you know, this is just another potential added bureaucracy, right? To delay projects that folks are constructing. But you know, I can kind of see as a possible like incentive because the point, right, like if you have story polls, I think the notification time period is probably a little less of a concern because your neighbors will see, they'll notify each other, that type of thing. But it's just the poster boards, you know, it takes some time for folks to kind of see that posted. So incentive wise, you know, what if there was something, I mean, not to problem solve, but I can see the county saying something like, okay, you know, for proper notification, you're gonna have, a poster board's gonna need to be posted 30 days before.
You're talking
Or-
about what are you talking about? You're talking about the big one, the demonstration
demonstration
scale?
scale, yeah,
No,
yeah.
I was talking about the little,
Oh, notice of public.
yeah, because they're not gonna have all that 2 months. I don't know that they're gonna have.
Okay, right, so that little notice. So-
Yeah,
So you could do that, or, you know, you could, if you do story polls, then it's much shorter, like, you know, 5 days before the hearing, or what, I'm not trying to problem solve,
Yeah, yeah,
but maybe there's a avenue for
yeah.
incentivizing.
There's a way to
story-
address noticing separate from and demonstrations. of scale.
Well, okay. Who are we going to? If we go to the board, we're not gonna be going back to them all the time for this and then this and then this. Whatever, if we decide to go to the board, we need to have a package that covers the, whatever it is that we're concerned about. That we're trying to resolve.
Yeah. I plan to put it in a design review update. What I was saying about the objective standards is a larger project.
Okay,
So this is good timing because it can ride along.
okay, so your thoughts are to put it into the changes that you're planning.
Yeah.
Instead of going to the soup.
Well, it would go to the soups. It would just go in a package for the design.
Okay.
I have a question though, those objective standards are only subject to low income housing, correct?
We hope to clarify, so we in a meeting, over several meetings, the CDRC, we looked at the blue book and could try to make the standards a little more objective.
I think they will apply to all projects though.
So, yeah, so if there's gonna be an improvement, if it all goes as planned. The design standards in the discretionary process, which is this process,
Yes.
will be improved. But hopefully will still resemble what you have. And then also there'll be objective design standards that are applicable for ministerial requirements.
So we're saying, committee will still have plenty of coastal craft and houses we can build.
So guys, maybe recommendations at like 1:30, we break for public comment and then,
Sure.
and then continue discussion. One thing I did want to touch upon is, under the current policy, what's within the purview of this committee? And I'm bringing it up because if the policy continues as it is and a project comes in front of us that has the visual demonstration, are we allowed to, for instance, require, like if you continue the item, require this item to have story poles? Because I've seen that in a prior letter.
Yeah, I think we went wrong on that one, because the finding that is required is that you find that the project
Provide a demonstration.
complies with the scale related standards of of this design review standards book. It's not so specific as in
You
a
must.
way that involves story poles or in a way that involves a poster. It doesn't say that. It says you have to demonstrate that it complies with the scale standards of the design review standard. So there's another way that they demonstrated, which is the project that I think you're all talking about, where the CDRC did require the story poles. The applicant was able to demonstrate compliance with the scale standards in a different way. It wasn't story poles, and the CRC was able to approve it, even though they did say we require story poles. So I think the requirement is an empty requirement.
Okay, so
Not enforceable.
maybe to be crystal clear, this committee cannot require a project to.
It's unenforceable unless there is a change to the ordinance.
Well, I had a question about that too. To my understanding, we're not actually, we're not able to require anything. Can only suggest and approve. We are not able to dictate
They
terms.
have to
we can make
demonstrate
conditions.
skill.
We can make recommendations.
Conditions of approval.
Right, but they can't be outside of something that's. We can't set policy or term. Our recommendations have to be within the framework of what's required in
Yes.
planning. But
Yes.
we're not able to say, if the county can't require story poles, we can't require them.
That's right.
Yeah, and so I think that particular project, the write-up from the committee maybe was not.
Right, if we say, we'd like to see it, and they say, okay, we'll do it, that's
It
different.
actually was written, you must construct storybooks.
Right, well, to me, I would have said no, personally.
It's not, we can only enforce what's in that blue book. That's right. That's
Right,
the only
right.
thing we can say, and
Right.
we can reject based on it meets the guidelines in the blue book or it doesn't meet it.
Right.
That's it.
Right, regardless of how it was written.
We can find another way to comply that's different than the C.
Because I think this committee maybe had a misunderstanding and then provided that, like felt that was within their
Yeah,
rights, but it sounds like
Well, it's
that's.
actually something that we had agreed on here.
yeah,
When we were doing this whole story pool thing
yeah.
before, it was written up as that.
Yeah, I think
Not helping
we-
that person.
I think we could advise you that. The CDRC.
Okay, additional comments before breaking for public input?
Well, I want to ask like Ed would know, how much are renderings and what's the value of renderings and two-dimensional posters laminated?
You mean the basic
$1,000?
demonstration of scale that
Basically,
that
yeah,
we've done?
yeah, I mean, we charge for it.
Yeah, we charge for it, we see. You know. Yeah, okay,
$1,000, couple $1,000.
yeah,
So, I mean, that reduces that,
Well, I mean, I've done
And-
more,
yeah,
$1,000.
right? So it's not nothing, so,
but I mean, they do two different things, I mean, if are we opening up the public?
there's one more minute, you have to wait.
You called it. Yeah,
No,
okay.
we can only.
Well, the other thing to me that we haven't brought up, like, however it's done, the netting, all that goes in the landfill as well. But always bothered.
Well, not me.
Well, Mark, you just,
Well,
you're just better than the rest of us.
I roll mine up. Did you throw those two backboards away?
Well, during the winter you do.
I
use-
see a lot
I
of
use-
them.
I use it- I use it for radiuses.
I can use that here next time.
Okay, I think that's a good segue then into public comment, so, did I turn it over to Mark or to?
Yes, I can, okay, so now we'll open up, item number 1 for public comments. So I will first begin with the speaker slips I've received for those in person. So first up is Lisa Ketchum.
Hi, that's me. I was on the MCC for 7 years, and then I had to put there the medical and the planning commission, so, it's a bit quite different perspective. And I often wonder, when a project comes to us for CPP,
Lisa, do you mind coming up a little closer?
how's this?
Okay.
Often I'll see changes that you made and think, oh, I'm so grateful for those changes that you made, and then other times, I won't be specific, but a project might come and it's like something that could have been made better, but at this point, after it's been through CDRC, it's not the time. But I really appreciate this process that you do, and I wonder, okay, to story polls. Well, one other thing I gotta say first, that drove me to, Camille sent me a notice to comment here, and this isn't directly to you, but this relates to the correspondence received. So this is more to the public or anybody who, where. The plea is for them to stick to the issues and don't make it personal. And I was particularly offended by the comments in the letter about a previous CPRC member with accusations, going to the other side and just making it personal. It has nothing to do with the issue at hand. It doesn't help at all. It's just offensive. So I just had to say that. Anyway, so story Paul, so Steve Meyerowitz brought this up at the planning commission previous time and mentioned that this was an issue because there's been correspondence that has been sent to us as well, although it's not on the agenda. And at the end of our meetings, we have a period where he gives a report and then commissioners can ask questions or make comments. So this is when this occurred, and he said, so if any of you today had any comments to make, we had just a brief unagendized, comments, and I said that, it's definitely helpful for public outreach. I mean, I just to make sure that the people who are gonna be affected by this building, might be 3 blocks away, know what's going on. And so I don't know what your noticing is, the range for that and how that all works, but just that aspect of it is very helpful to the community. And particularly I noticed when you had, I guess your last meeting, there was a house on the agenda that did have story polls. I thought, oh, I better go look at that, take advantage of this. So I drove by and, it is more effective for me anyway, to see that in real time, in the neighborhood, and you're standing there and this is what that's the outline. Whereas you go to a project, you see this rendering and it might, best effort to make this look good, right? And you don't get the same impact.
My apologies.
Can we let Lisa finish?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. Did you have more to say? Just giving you a chance to finish, since you're important in this discussion, you're planning commission.
I don't know, my thoughts are out of my head. Oh, all the ins and outs, the realities, and how it helps or hinders your process, or I don't know, I would like to remember.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I will call Katie Hustuk. Yeah. we have her.
You can hear me, I'm not used to having a time limit to talk. So do we still have to say our name and where we live and all that kind of stuff? Okay, Katie Costu, architect, used to be on the committee, 620 Avenue, Portola. Yeah, Katie@PennStudios.com. Okay, so I took some notes quickly. I already sent in the items that we've covered previously over many years of work that the committee has already invested in, lots and lots of discussion and a lot of attempts at public outreach. So I'll let that just be something that everybody circles back on. I wanted to start by saying that until this came to light that it was a policy that was not actually required, which nobody realized, this was never an issue. You put up story poles, everyone was happy. There was an exception in there, and I don't know the exact verbiage, but I know that it related to vegetation and topography. If the site was too steep or it was unsafe or not reasonable to put up story poles, then you could use a visual demonstration of scale. So I don't think that there seems to have ever been a problem with how it was done before, and now we've opened up this big can of worms. I don't think it's bad to discuss and try to figure out if there's a way to improve what was previously required, but it was generally accepted that everybody thought it was required and people did it, and then that wasn't something that was constantly coming up. So I personally am in favor of story poles. I've always made that clear with my position. I think that there should be some exceptions, like for instance, one-story developments maybe don't need to be triggering story poles. But that's kind of getting into the minutia of how to apply a demonstration of scale. I think that something that's really beneficial about them that Lisa also commented on is that it is a visual noticing to the community. So maybe story poles don't need to be what that visual noticing is, but the reality is that the mail delivery is unreliable, and we all do have to live with getting mail in a post office box. So it's slower, we don't always check it every day. And then also you've got people that are outside of the mailing radius that maybe would have an interest or want to know what's going on, but maybe they were just outside of that radius. So having a visual there that's not just an 8.5 by 11 posting of what the project is or a poster board, like I think that there's some value in that. So maybe it is worth discussing whether or not a different visual could meet that. But generally, I think that the community they use it as a way to know that there's a project, but more so neighbors use it as a way to complain about impact to views. They are not realistically, from my experience, using it to evaluate the mass and scale, which is how the committee is using it. I think that the zoning regulations are already in place that create a buildable envelope for what you can build there. The mass and scale should be handled by the design guidelines, but the reality is if it's not being handled by a committee where there are some professional, architects on the committee, the planners are not architects. They don't have necessarily the experience, depending on their tenure or what their education was, to be able to evaluate those projects. So I really do think that it helps the committee a lot. I do think it helps the community a lot. But going back to the cost, I think that, hopefully I can have like 10 more
Please
seconds.
continue.
Okay, so when it comes down to the construction side of things, I can see this from the perspective of architect, of client, of committee member, and of community member. And the reality is $8,000 to $10,000, there's this dispute about oh, it's not that much money in the scheme of things, but it is that much money in the scheme of things. The reality is for people who are building a house, if they don't have the money in their bank account, they're doing it through construction financing. And the way that those loans work, unless you've got a hard money loan, which means you're spending a lot of money right out the door on a high interest rate and you're paying for all of it. With a construction loan, they're not going to fund that loan until you have your fully developed plans. And with the length of time it takes to get through the process to build a house on the coast side, people are not going to have that loan until they're ready to pull a permit, which means this is money out of their pocket. And it's a lot of money. So I think that does matter, and it is a deterrent. And clients, if it's not required of them, they are not going to voluntarily choose to do it because it's a huge financial hit. So I think that's relevant. I don't think that we should be poo-pooing that cost, but I do still think that generally it should be required for most projects. And I think that, it sucks. It's an added cost to a project. It's an added, we've already got the added time frame for how long the project takes to get through. But there is a lot of added value to it for the community and for the committee. There might be other ways to represent the visual noticing, but I think that aside from that, from a demonstration of scale standpoint for the community, more so it's being used as a tool for arguing about views, which kind of goes out of the purview of the committee. Like there's the one section on views, on how it should be evaluated and to reduce the impact of views. But if views are not protected and that's how it's being used, then maybe story poles aren't the way. But there's a whole bunch of information that we've covered. We've researched a lot of different municipalities on how they handle it. We sent a letter to planning. The problem was it just was on the very bottom of the list for the workflow. So I mean, the work is there, the work was done. I'm not on a committee anymore, so good luck. But I'm here because I care. And I think that people shouldn't only care when it impacts your house and your view. If you care, you go and you participate. And so all of the years that we worked on this, people were not showing up. The only time they care is when it affects their house. And we got feedback from the county. Hey, guess what? You don't have a grassroots group of people that's pissed off about this, so this is at the bottom of the list. There's other things that are more important. So people gotta stop being selfish and care about like the whole community and not just their one house. Okay, I went way past, sorry. Bye.
You got 3 seconds left.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Katie shared with us all of the, I would like to see other municipalities and,
Yeah, I can find the old emails and forward them to have them passed along if that's helpful.
you haven't.
A lot of it was stuff we talked about in the meetings where we kind of like summarized and went over it, but yeah, we were kind of seeing like how do other people do it, and that's where we had started to look at using like the tape height measurement on something rather than certification to keep the cost down, because when you're getting those $8,000 to $10,000 quotes, that's for it to be certified height, which is why there is value in it. That's the whole reason that yeah. I mean, my plans were told 5,000 and that is for not certified. So I think that that's why that extra cost is there. Is that if you're going to a historical company and not a contractor, they're assuming that part of that is going to be certifying the height. Because the thing is, the perspectives, those are not scaled. So it's good, in my opinion, that the new requirements have evolved to have some kind of a requirement that is visual, that is scaled. Because we were seeing stuff where you were having like an aerial perspective as a demonstration of scale, and I'm sorry, but unless you fly a drone or you have a plane, that's not how the community is gonna ever experience that house. So that was kind of our gripe about some of the visual demonstrations of scales, that they're very easy to manipulate and not be accurate. But the same thing can be done with story poles if they're not certified. So that's why we were creatively trying to figure out how can we solve that problem in a cost-effective way. So, I mean, we really did put a lot into trying to make this work.
So you can send me those notes and then we'll post the notes that you already sent online. In
I gotta
case-
go find all my paper notes that I can scan too, but I have them.
I will say, Katie, depending on how you do your renderings, if you provide the right information to the person that's making, they are scaled, correct? If you
It
give-
depends if they're good at what they do. I mean, I brought a 3D perspective for a project that I brought to the committee recently, and I did a photo montage that was from a picture taken from that exact perspective, and I matched the massing to the photo. But I was only able to do that because the projects around it had come to committee, so I literally pulled those files and modeled what
Yeah.
went through.
Right, but if.
But most
Hey,
people can't do that.
if you don't mind, I think this will be good. Let's circle back on
Yes,
that.
yes, yes.
Let's complete the public comment period and then.
I just wanted some clarification on it.
Okay, I have no additional speaker request forms for those in person, so next we'll move on to Zoom. So Christy Usher, please unmute your mic and please begin by stating your name, address, and email address for the record.
My name is Christy Usher, PO Box 370-7011, Montana, California. I've lived on coast for over 15 years in Montana, and I'm a city planner on the peninsula also for over 15 years. I support requirements for swimming pools for all
Christie,
new. Yeah,
Christy, it's a little bit hard to hear you. I believe there's some background noise where you're at.
do you have some kind of recording?
It's on speakerphone, that's probably why.
Or do you have your device broadcasting the?
No.
Yeah, she's on mute. Are you there?
Christy, are you
can I
there?
continue? Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
I support requirements for story poles for all new two-story residences. I do not support alternatives to two-story poles in the current and revised policy, and here's why. I have a failure to act right of my own from less than 1 year ago regarding the project planner and the Coastside Design Review Committee accepting materials as demonstration of scale in lieu of story poles, and these materials were in fact not a demonstration of scale. As a result, a project was approved uphill and adjacent to my residence in December 2023, with no demonstration of scale materials provided for my adjacent downhill home. Specifically, and as an example, the Coastside Design Review Chair thought a site plan with a footprint of my home on it provided massing information. A site plan obviously does not provide any massing information. A site plan shows building footprints, not sections and not elevations, so it has nothing to do with scale or mass. I would also like to note the project was first heard in November 2023 by this committee and then approved in December 2023. So I think there's a misconception that projects take a long time to get through the committee when they do not. As residents, we can't rely on or trust the competence of the committee or staff in processing these demonstration of scale materials in lieu of story poles, which is why story poles are needed. Story poles are a clear presentation of mass and scale, regardless of your training, education, or background. And as I learned the hard way, we can't assume as residents that the committee or staff understand and are following these alternative demonstration of scale massing requirements, because they certainly did not in approving the house uphill and adjacent to mine less than a year ago, in which again, no story poles and no massing documentation was provided under this current policy, and the revised policy appears no different. Therefore, again, I support requiring story pole requirements for new 2 stories and not mudding the policy with alternative documentation methods for demonstration of scale, which are vague, interpretive, and not properly enforced in past practices by staff and the Coastside Committee, as illustrated in my direct experience. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, I have no additional speaker request forms and see no additional raised hands on Zoom. I'll provide a couple seconds in case there's anyone else that would like to speak on this item. Okay, seeing none, Chair, please indicate if you would like to close the public comment period.
If there's both comment.
Okay.
And do a 40-minute, I can't.
Yeah, so now we'll go back to discussion between
Yeah,
commission members.
we'll go back to discussion just for just a little process check. I think we can go maximum until 2:15 and we'll get wrapping up then. I just want to thank all the members of the public who did comment. Given that, yeah, a lot of times folks are coming here for a very specific project, but you know, it's nice to hear outside the context of a specific project about the concerns on demonstration of scale. So yeah, let's open it back up. John, I cut you off a little bit. You had some
Oh, that's
questions
all
for
right.
Katie. Do you- No, I mean,
Well, I just, Katie, I think there's definitely some room to tune up the, the imaging on the demonstration scale of the imaging. And there is no real requirement to make sure that it's scaled correctly, so that is a loose point. But to your point, Katie, there's also, most people, if you go put up story poles short of a certification process, which adds expense, most people, you're not gonna say, oh, I cheated him a foot over here, it's a foot this, it's that, it's, you look and there's orange netting and stuff around, and that's not far from perfect. Even if you try, it's far from perfect. I guess, well,
Yeah. Maybe that's why it's only a couple grand. Sorry.
but it's, to me, I still, as far as an actual representation of what a house is going to look like in a certain setting, I personally feel a properly scaled rendering is a much better end result. When you're building, Mark can verify this, you frame the building and it's open and it looks one way. You put the sheet on, you sheet it with plywood and it looks massive, and then, wait a minute, it changed, the perception to the eye moves with every stage of the building process. And I just, to me, as you pointed out again, Katie, so often the story pole process is being used not for demonstration of scale, but for punitive action, for other reasons, for a lot of things. And I just don't think unless someone's asking for a variance or something outside the norm, I don't think it should be required. I don't see the value in it.
Okay. One thing I did want to mention that I had taken it on and ran out of time. There's something that I think should be addressed or considered at least is, massing is different than height. And I think that requiring project to be under its height limit that's allowed in the zoning, I don't think should be happening. I think there's a reason those regulations are there and this is supposed to be layered on top of that. I don't think that that is appropriate. I think that evaluating the mass and scale, which would be like the shape of the ridge lines, that's why just the peak isn't really quite,
Well,
that's more going to like, am I blocking someone's view? That's just demonstrating height. We're not supposed to be demonstrating height. The height limitations are already very explicitly spelled out.
Right.
So I think that that's worth capturing.
I agree 100% with that, and that's to my point of, it's not really an accurate representation of a building.
Yeah, and I would say that I'm not sure we're taking the same rigor to the visual representation either. I think it's sort of a equal point, right? We're not looking,
So
we're
we
not
should make
scaling off.
a detail, make them detail them. Historicals,
No,
like every window, like every property.
Yeah,
did I somehow say that?
yeah, so I just want to make sure we're not, over emphasizing what a story pole can do. I think it's a general representation of
Right.
what this thing is gonna be, right? And, yeah, okay, so let me see, there's a couple of places we could take this as a committee. I mean, and maybe we should talk through about what we can do. Is this can this committee form a subcommittee to then go into more details with, community members? Would we like to open up this discussion to architect who's been on this committee? Does anybody have any issues with that?
I'm in favor.
Okay, good, go ahead, Ed.
I've been on the committee when it was in the sheriff substation. Way before
Right.
probably anybody else in the room here has been on.
I
I was
wasn't
on
on
it for like
it.
3
I
years.
sat on the other side.
Pardon me?
I sat on the other side of the table at the sheriff's substation.
Oh, okay. So you've done both, of course, and recently, one of the projects, ours was used for the demonstration of the demonstration.
Yeah.
So I think if you have to decide between one or the other, which is kind of part of this discussion, that the demonstration of scale, if it's done correctly, tells people a lot more and illustrates really what the house is gonna look like. And I think that if the demonstration of scale instructions or guidelines, or whatever you wanna call them, could be done so that really what people are concerned about is the streetscape.
Right.
So if you have a house and you're filling in and there's a house on each side, then you want your front elevation down there along with the houses on each side. And I think that's gonna tell people a lot more than anything else. Now, that should be done to a large enough scale.
Right.
So that you can really see, okay, the ridge lines you're lining up. You see the shape of the house. Hopefully you see the colors. Is it a hip roof? Is it a gable roof? Is it a barrel arch roof, whatever? Is it a flat roof? Is it a shed roof? And you would, oh, that's a nice looking house, or that house looks kind of weird compared to the neighbors. But does the house have to look like the houses on each side? I don't think so. I mean, that's pretty boring. And everything on the coast is eclectic anyway, so that should usually be an issue. The story poles, I think Katie mentioned it. The only people, when you put up the story poles, everybody sees it in the neighborhood because they drive by and they see them up there for days. And, oh, there's a new house coming down. Oh, good, okay. And usually the only people that really care about it are the people next door and maybe the people behind it, and if there's views. And you can block views in San Mateo County. there's no view guarantee. And the house that was built on Alhambra a couple of years ago, right next door to the convenience outlet. Or the people behind, might have even been a one-story house with big picture windows looking out at the ocean. And this 2.5-story house all the way up to 28 feet was just built right there. And I don't think you can sue for that when there are no view corridors guaranteed. So, I would say if you had to choose between the two, I would say a very well designed and documented and outlined demonstration of scale is more valuable to everybody than the story poles. The story poles are expensive. They used to be $3 or $4 grand a set. Now we're doubled in cost as a lot of other things have.
I'm gonna riff off that, maybe just 2 points. The first one is I feel like the visual, a well-done visual demonstration of scale is, I think, good for the committee and a trained eye. I would probably challenge that if it's for the community at large, mostly because, you know, they aren't necessarily taking a look at the plans with that kind of certainty in their understanding of being able to read what's on paper. And the second point is maybe just to take this to an extreme and a little bit of a devil's advocate. What about taking the story pole part completely out of the policy? That, you know, you will provide a visual representation of the project with very specific requirements and, you know, not provide the option of a story pole in the description. I'm playing devil's advocate there, but, you know, just, I want to talk through this discussion.
I'm not opposed to being very clear.
Just because it's clear, yeah, it's like,
Right.
not this or this.
And I would say the only advantage that I heard, which I think is a strong argument for story poles, is if you just require it across the board and you make it very explicit, then people know what to expect. Because I think the greatest source of frustration as you go through that process is the subjective requirements that get added on. And where it's all objective, I think it feels better for everyone. This is what I have to do, give me the checklist, I ticked all the boxes, okay, now, can I build my house? When it's, well, you have to demonstrate scale to an adequate point that we all agree is adequate. It's very subjective. And so anything that we can do to make it, I think, easier for people to understand what does it take to build a house on the coast, I support.
I just want to counter that. I feel like the policy language isn't, there's some subjectivity, but it's not that subjective. You must provide a view showing, but the thing is, what we get, the submittals, yeah, they're not up to snuff, and we've pushed back in terms of what we can do. So I think we have to be ready to do it. Are we ready to continue items because of insufficient demonstration of scale? I haven't seen our committee be willing to do that. We've went ahead because we don't want to burden the project, and, you know, in the interest of keeping things moving, we've seen the item, but, you know, are we willing to say, no, does not meet the demonstration scale? The planners don't weigh in on that. We do, like, we're the ones that are looking at the demonstrations.
Well, we look in advance of us giving it to you, but, so if the scenario that was presented by Ed, like if every demonstration of scale was, you know, perfectly meet the policy and was perfectly accurate, we would need more time, from a planning staff standpoint to just do a quick comparison to make sure, I don't know, does this look about right? So if we could require it as a part of the application, even though there could be changes, then maybe we can do that sort of rigorous level of review. Because the last thing we want to do is like have the demonstration of scale be like rigorously reviewed at the hearing, and then it's always going to result in like a continuance because there's like, say, a flaw or whatever. So it's like, I think it would be, if in a perfect world where you can get a perfect demonstration of scale and staff can adequately check it out, and it's a good level of accuracy by the time it gets on the poster, then how does that compare to story polls that may or may not be accurate, you know, because the field verification is harder than the PDF verification. I mean, like, who goes out there you know, who measures the setbacks, who does, you know what I mean? Like, then you're, you know, if you're ensuring accuracy on story polls, I think it's a little.
Yeah, I'm all for that, by the way. Mark, I want to let you speak.
I'm raising my arm for Kate.
Not wait till you're ready.
Okay, I'll make a point to that and then we'll get to you. So, yes, I would, if the county could do that, I mean, to me, that would be like much preferred, because I feel like as a community member, I'm just expressing a little bit of my frustration here, is that what you guys will tell the applicant is that, hey, this doesn't look like it's meeting it, but just go to meeting and they could deny you or not. And then, you know, there's stuff that the public wants to comment about, traffic, about all this stuff, and you're kind of pointing them to here as an avenue for them to express what they want, and then we have to tell them, you know, not in our purview, you know, so it's kind of setting up this process where we feel like we're kind of receiving a lot of this that we can't really react to.
I think
And
that's the fair response. That is the response, and I think we, you know, we really pass along comment, and we do sometimes say like, well, we won't be covering traffic or whatever, but more of it's just like, we pass along the comment, and then it's up to the decision maker to say, you know, this is relevant, this is not. But I think it sets up a time crunch, because we're asking now for 15 days for demonstration of scale, so that we can say yes or no, or please fix this. And then by the 10-day mark, the poster, you know, would have made those corrections and it would be fine by then. It just sets up this time crunch where you don't want to delay anyone, you don't want to like stop anyone from going over here, and you don't want to be like the super bad guy kicking to the next month. But if we required it like at the time of like the date of
yeah, the plan set,
application.
right?
Exactly, and there might be a risk of having them like have to
Submit.
revise it if the proposal changes with our review or what have you. But that'll actually give us time to like, I mean, of course, it's more for us to do, but we can, you know, maybe get some more consistency.
Okay, so what I think I'm hearing you say is that if demonstration of scale was part of the required plan set, rather than as a separate submittal, after the package is deemed complete or not, then there's more.
Yeah, you don't have the time crunch that you do at the end when you feel like you're blocking somebody from going in.
That would be great, and I think that would be a benefit to the owners as well. Because then there's.
Regardless of the type of regardless of the type of demonstration scale,
Visual.
only visual.
Well, it would be, if it was story polls, then we would have to do a field verification. I was mostly talking about the poster, like the PDF.
If the poster's part of the.
It's a plan package.
Yeah.
It is sometimes and sometimes not, but
Yeah.
Katie wants to jump in.
yeah, okay.
Kind of going along that same vein of conversation, there has definitely been, from my experience, that experience where the onus ends up being on the committee to have to be in the bad guy position of saying, hey, this isn't a complete submission, and I'm not even talking about demonstration of scale. I had projects in the committee that didn't have any, you know, drainage drawings, or didn't have roof plans. And I think a lot of this goes back to the planners are overloaded. The people who are doing this work, they have a lot of work to do. They don't necessarily have architectural backgrounds and training to be able to evaluate that. So that said, those are the people who are supposed to be evaluating whether or not these demonstrations of scale are architecturally accurate. And I think that that's problematic. And I think that it's also another layer of that similar problem of professional experience, is that expecting somebody, like, let's say you say no more story polls, but everybody has to do a visual demonstration of scale that is the same across the board. That is also going to essentially require that all of the applicants hire an architect. And right now, that is not a requirement. That's a much bigger financial expectation than, you know, we have people who come to the committee who have done their own designs and their own drawings, and sometimes they've been better than some of the architect drawings I've seen. So I don't, you know, we've talked about whether or not maybe an architect should, like, the committee should be able to say somebody needs to hire an architect, because what you're bringing to us, we can't.
Well,
make a
well, Katie, I'm
decision on,
gonna
but
challenge that, because the rest of the plan set, right? Like, they have to, you know, somebody has to do. And so,
you do not have to have an architect to do a single family home.
You don't need an architect.
okay,
For those like perspective, like very like sophisticated 3D renderings,
It's gonna be.
you would need like software and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but we were saying don't do perspective. We're saying just put it all on a flat plane. So it's essentially just knowing what the measurements are, you know, from house to the next house. and the size of that house and putting it on a flat line.
Yeah, but that means you have to go like trespass on people's property
So
to
Kate,
get an accurate measurement, like,
if I can pipe in,
yeah.
you were on the board and I was on the other side of the fence and I brought you 3 plans at one point. And when I did the demonstration of scale on those, I went to the neighbors, they had reached out to me anyway. Hey, I'm doing the plans next door. I'm trying to do a demonstration. I'm gonna explain what it was. So do you mind if I measure your ridge height real quick with the tape? You know, I grabbed the ladder and measured the width. And I told my guy, hey, the garage is 20 feet. It's this, it's a 5 and 12 pitch. You should be able to do it. Just kind of reverse architected it. Reverse engineered it. And I made sure that the renderings for the scale were correct.
But that's because you have the experience.
Right.
To be able to do
Well,
so.
Katie,
Right, but
how
I
would you
didn't have
feel?
to trespass, they were already involved, they were checking in with me, I knocked on the door and said, hey, I wanna make sure this looks right, and I'm fine. You know, I think there's other, I think as long as we can somehow verify that they're done correctly, I don't know what that project would look like. But there's definitely a mechanism in place, I mean, you could have your surveyor shoot it. When he comes out to do the boundary survey, say, hey, can you shoot the ridges around here?
Well, I just want to make sure that, or caution that we're not kind of going for, perfection. Like, I would say that if they do these demonstration scales to the same standards that are required of the plan sets, no more. You
Right,
know,
but I guess what I'm arguing.
it's not
for
gonna
is-
be
Is sort of
100%.
again in support of story poles, because I think that putting story poles up, that's gonna be an across the board, apples to apples representation of projects, regardless of whether there's an architect, regardless of if you're able to create an appropriate rendering. And from what we had suggested in our previous, subcommittee meetings about this, the way to be able to verify that without having to certify and have it be something that doesn't have to be checked in person by planning, is to have them put a tape measure, like a little clock or something, tape it to the pole that's on there, take the photos of it in place, because the photos of the demonstration of scale historic poles had to be sent to planning to demonstrate that it had been done by a certain date. You send it with pictures showing that the height measurement is there. That's easier and faster for them to review and verify. It's more accurate across the board. And I feel like from a cost standpoint, that's gonna be a little bit more of an even playing field than having the expectation that people are gonna be able to graphically create something that's realistic and that's gonna really demonstrate the scale.
And increase in notification.
Yeah, I still think that, yeah, and then you don't have to think about a secondary, because if historic poles go away or they're not required, I do think that people should be talking about how do we visually signal to the community that there's gonna be a project here.
Well,
Right.
just to, also, do you guys remember when story poles were, we thought required? And then there was like a little subcommittee or something formed of the CRC where we would police people who didn't take down their story poles.
Oh, I do remember that.
And then we would have to hound them to do that. And it's so like, there's a downside of this that again adds more, bureaucracy and like staff time and enforcement. So just wanna add that.
And today, we offer the flexibility.
So are we circling back now to basically what our current policy is? I just want to take a pulse check.
I love
I'll be
your idea,
confused
doing
either
away.
I don't know, I think we're trying to come up with a checklist verification that we can write up for plan.
Of what though?
Demonstrating on site.
Or.
Well, we're getting closer to some agreements, a little bit on some scale.
I feel like it's muddier than ever.
I mean, does this
We'll just-
I'll spit it out, I'll tell you something I'd like to see.
And then on counterpoint.
Mark was the biggest proponent of story poles, and I think he's coming around to demonstration of.
No, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm a contrarian, so I just want to make sure this discussion's fully fleshed out,
Yeah.
because we circle back. I mean, honestly, we come back, right? Because, it's a journey, right?
And there's pros and cons to both.
Jim,
Maybe we should take a vote and see where we're at. And then go from there.
Well, and also, I think it's important that we review Katie's notes, and Katie's notes were provided at noon today, and she will
Yeah,
add more.
sorry.
And she will provide more to that, so there's also the option of posting everything online. If you say we would like to recommend that the county adopts, requirements for story poles, and then if you read Katie's notes, there's a lot of specifications
Yeah,
around
yeah,
that,
I
and a
think-
lot of cost around that.
I think with Jim, just maybe a pulse check, right? Like, where are we at? Not like a final decision.
There's always a continuous to read Katie's.
Pulse check? What?
Bill, I have a question for you, say general. I did a little looking into story poles and what's going on currently. Seems to me there's a bit of momentum around, like Los Gatos for one, is easing their story pole requirements. It seems like there's a number of jurisdictions that are easing off and backing them down a little bit, simplify them. Are you aware of that as far as,
I think there's a desire here to keep them simple, because I think a lot of the municipalities were requiring like the surveying and all this. And then staff needs to do some, you
Right.
know, on-site stuff or what have you, and it just adds like time. So where it takes 30 days to prep something now, it may take even more because now we're doing all this other stuff.
Yeah, there's some easier ones like under 18 feet, right, or one story, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
things that are like, yeah,
Well,
but
what about incentives? Can you think of any incentives that really would be?
Well, something I'm thinking about too is like maybe we can assign an FAR limit, where if you're going above that, where you want to see more story poles. Because the FAR sort of represents not only the height, but the mass. And so,
ADUs excluded.
Yeah,
yeah,
so I like, let's come up with all the exclusionary
Yeah,
options.
yeah.
because like. Yeah,
That's a
I
very
don't
good
think, I've been listening mostly, but I agree with both sides, I think, to almost everything. I mean, I think when people do put story poles up, it sways the discussion towards views, and I don't think that's productive, and I think it is a big cost, but I also think that the neighbor who's gonna have big honker next to them in the next year or so should know.
You know, I've been reading this thing on views, and I hear what you're saying, that we don't regulate them. But I'm gonna quote our subjective book here. It says, possible methods to minimize view blockers include locating living space where it would have less view impact, increase the setback, lowering the roof plate heights, choosing roof forms. Now, we've had meetings where we've already done that, where we've told the owner or the architect, hey, you know, you need to compromise a little bit with the neighbors here because you really impacted things. And make it a condition that if you want approval now, so we do have some power to allow for some give and take. And I think that's really the nut of it here, what we're talking about, is we want to notify people, we want to let them know, and then we take what comes and we deal with it and we push it forward. We represent both the builder and the neighbors. And so I don't see not doing that. And I think it's important that we put something together and make that happen.
I mention it, there's something in the blue book, right at the beginning, it says, I don't know the exact wording, these guidelines have the power of law. And I think those are almost the exact words, and that's just not true.
Believe me, I like to go as lightly as I can on the owner.
I mean, you can't say it's the law and it's subjective at the same time, those are two different things.
if you look at it, if you
This is
read
what
it,
we got, you know?
Yeah, I know.
What it does is it references the zoning, I think, clause that talks about a design review committee is gonna be formed to.
It's just poorly worded there, and it could be done a lot better. And years ago, when they started talking about revising that was one of the things I brought up, that this
It'd make it easier for everybody, yeah.
really isn't the
well,
law,
there's shall and consider.
or yeah.
Consider, you can consider
If
a shall.
feasible,
you have
or
to,
if feasible, and there's a lot of wiggle words
right? Right.
all through that
Yeah.
document.
Semantics a lot,
And
but
that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay, there should be wiggle words,
right.
because if there aren't any, everything's gonna look the same. I mean,
Right,
it's all
well, I
gonna-
mean, to my point, when we started this whole thing, and you, like, oh, we're gonna lower ridge lines and move this around, move this, but when it was proposed, that's what was there.
Right.
So that's to me where like, okay, here's your design, but the secret things come out later, you're gonna have to move everything. If we want it 26 feet, let's make it 26 feet. If you want a requirement to not block somebody's thing, say it.
Right.
So that you get a client, or you get a client, or you get a client, and you can bring something that meets those requirements without, well, we'll try this and maybe we'll have to tweak everything. That's, for me, that's the frustration, is that it's so muddy. and there's no way to know until you're all the way here.
Yeah, I agree.
Give it a clear roadmap, tell people
Okay,
what you're looking for and do it.
And I think you're talking a little bit more beyond the demonstration of skill,
Right.
right? Just about the CDRC.
But the thing is where demonstration of skill comes into the matter is, if you are meeting all the guidelines, why do you have to demonstrate scale? You're
That
meet-
is a guideline.
The scale is implicit in the guidelines, so if you're inside, your scale is within the
If you're
guidelines.
inside the building envelope,
Yeah, if you are meeting
So,
all.
so John, my understanding is the zoning regulations about what you can build and the design guidelines about what you should, or just, there's.
Well, that's my
right, it,
point.
I think
Well-
we're talking like if the zoning regulations is the max, right? And if everyone designs to the max, right, we're gonna get the cookie cutter,
yeah, you
house
could be next to
and-
two like 1970s, like one-story houses, yet you're not designing to the max or what's allowed, you're
So
designing to the
if my neighbor
neighborhood.
drives a compact car, I have to drive one too?
Yeah, heard the book.
Electric.
For the
Okay,
guidelines,
I'm gonna buy a red car, so I have to get it cut out and park it in my driveway. and
You,
sit
or
there and
just
watch
cross
it.
out the whole scale section of the standards, yeah.
I
Okay,
don't
guys,
agree.
so we'll try to stick as close to 2:15 as we can. Katie, I want to give you an opportunity maybe for one last comment, and I think we should at least decide what direction we'd like to take with this.
I have one comment and one question. My comment was about the suggestion of using like the ratio, like how much are you building up to your maximum floor area ratio? That's along the lines of how we were trying to figure out previously, like what should be reasonable triggers. My only concern with that is that not all of the zoning regulations on the mid-coast have a floor area limit and lot coverage limit, like they're, was it
What does
We
it?
do.
S3, there's no lot coverage.
Oh, in the C1 S3.
Yeah, yeah, so just
R3,
something to be aware of, because sometimes there's those little.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, that's our shots.
No, but if it allows for mixed use, and if
Oh.
that'll come to you, and then the R
There's not
three
very
S
many of them.
three, there's the R3 S3.
Yeah,
That's no,
so just
so
something
that's a
to,
good point, that's a good point.
just something to be aware of,
Consider.
and then a question for
Well,
council.
it's not, I think what he meant isn't the FAR like codified limit, I think he's just saying anything bigger
Some sort of
than
massing
a
indicator.
thousand, or anything bigger than 2,000.
Okay, just so that, I'm not getting into the weeds on it, but I want to make sure that we were remembering like how that could fall out.
Yeah.
So the question for the county is just logistically, while we're taking the temperature on this, it sounds like the workflow is going to be different than what was in the past, because this is gonna piggyback on something else that's moving forward for.
Yeah,
So with that in mind, what is the deadline, and is there still going to be the same kind of public outreach and comment opportunity? It's just so that everyone knows, like, when does this recommendation have to be sent in to be included? Because like, we already sent a letter in 2020 with our recommendations that the whole committee had agreed on, like, this has already happened, it just got put on the bottom of the list.
well, I think it's good to take the temperature of the current CDRC.
No, I totally agree,
And then,
like, how long do we have?
So you have-
To figure out people's opinions.
so we were shooting for January because of the SB 35, the effective date of January. So there still is time. I have to say, I'm working on it myself, so I'm pretty far from having a working draft. I'll say I'm still a couple months out at least.
Is there gonna be a public?
It
outreach
will,
part of that?
I asked the director if we can bring it to CDRC. And I think he said yes, just to get your comments on these objective standards.
How'd that go?
Because generally with public, like, for instance, I did not know about this meeting.
Yes.
Unless I proactively went to the CDRC's website to look for it, or got an email saying, hey, you've been part of these before, like, do you wanna come? So like, if I hadn't gotten your email, I wouldn't be here.
Okay.
So I think that that's relevant, we've talked about this all along, that noticing to the community and how's the best way to get the word out has always been an issue.
Yeah, I believe it's, because it's about region, it's more than a house, it applies to all design things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just generally put in the paper, we're not gonna send a mailer.
Yeah, like we talk about flyers, we talk about posting it at Spanglers.
Yeah, why don't, yeah, I think
People don't know, like, unless people are out there like
Do that.
shouting from the rooftops, that's why they're doing.
I'll consult the long range team as far as how they get these ordinance, participation.
Yeah, because if we're on a shorter timeline, I think it's relevant to be thinking and talking about that and knowing when does everybody have to have this final, direction.
I don't think you have to write every word of it, I wanna say that. I don't think you have to draft anything. I think you can give us some bullets.
Yeah.
And we can draft something, fuller from it.
Okay, and I think we're kind of rolling into like, what do we do as a committee here, right? And so there's a workflow underway, or there's work happening by Camille and planning on revisions to the design review guidelines. Are we comfortable with, talking about all this stuff now, and then we're gonna go make some changes or make no changes, right? Or do we, as a committee, for instance, want to take a position, write a letter or whatnot? And part of that's just so that we don't circle back on this every 6 months, or as we cycle out, we get a new committee member and they're like, hey, what about story polls, right?
No, I think on November 10th, we should have a checklist, box list prepared for Camille and hit it up one more time and deliver what it is that day.
Okay, so your recommendation is that for the next design review meeting, we have some language around like, and when you say checklist, do you mean like what a demonstration of scale
Yeah.
policy should have?
Just put them all there and then we'll go through and we'll weed out and.
I would suggest that we take a vote. There's 3 options. A, require storage poles. B, require just the demonstration of scale, so it would codify the current demonstration of scale policy, or 3, status quo, or sorry, C.
What's status quo?
I think that's your second option.
Following it.
Is that the same as the second one?
Yeah.
No, second one is codification. So like where demonstration of scale policy becomes law. Where you can choose your path. I mean, and then 3, and the C is like,
Okay.
so it's good to, I don't know if you think it's good or not, good to have a law in place, but, I think that's part of the problem. Some of the lack of clarity is because of the law.
That one's a silent vote.
Oh,
Do those represent the options? Am I missing it?
What about an FAR then?
So that, I think that would be story.
But
polls.
requiring story.
I think
polls,
that
right,
would
with
still be
conditions.
require story polls. Like, you're just setting the circumstances.
Yeah, it sounds like all 3 of your options would still be story polls.
I think so
Can you
Camille,
say it
let me-
again?
Okay, A, require story polls, but it's
With
with
conditions.
circumstances. B, just take the demonstration skill memo that we have now, which is like, you could either choose poster, you could choose story polls, you could choose a scale model, whatever you like, but we'll put that into law. So it has the force of law instead of just being a policy. And then C, which is just status quo, which is just work on the policy, we can change it as we need it. It's, informal, but also flexible. But also doesn't have, the power of law.
Are we gonna have option D, which is, not require story polls, but require visual demonstration scale?
Isn't that B? I think that's B.
Well, no, B is, you could do story polls, you could do.
But you have to demonstrate.
He already says you have to demonstrate.
Yeah, he says
but
you're-
without the options, basically. I'm just gonna throw that in as a D option, which is, we're not gonna, like, a demonstration of scale policy that does not mention story polls.
Or taking that
Oh,
out of the discussion so that community doesn't say like, where's our story polls anymore.
Oh, got it.
I'm not,
Okay.
I'm just gonna say, I'm not gonna vote for it, but I just,
is that gonna
in
be?
the interest of like laying everything out.
Okay,
All right, interesting.
yes.
So I guess there may be some confusion about B and C, the difference between B
Okay,
and C,
should
but
I write it all out so everyone's clear?
yeah. And
A.
so we can vote in the next 5 minutes.
Right fast, Camille.
B, codify DOS memo,
Which is similar to C, but
as
but
is.
not.
C is status
Run.
quo policy. And D is DOS memo, no story polls.
Camille, can you talk about B and C? Like, what are the implications behind codifying the current policy? Does it mean it's more important? Like, what do you, I guess I'm a little unclear. Like, we've been telling people like, yeah, you gotta, we're not gonna move your project forward.
Is,
And,
how we revised it recently?
yeah,
Like, and it was a little unclear. We had the flexibility to codify, to revise it because it wasn't codified, it wasn't law. it was
Okay,
informal policy. So But also, if somebody really challenged us, like took us to court on that memo, the memo may not hold
It's
weight.
the exact reason that storage pools are not required like everybody thought. We found out it was a policy, not a requirement.
Okay.
That's really the difference between B and C.
So someone could come in without a demonstration of scale.
Yeah, right now it's a policy.
Yeah, it's not required.
So without a poster.
But
It's
we,
required by the county by policy,
But-
but if there should be like a legal challenge, it's not as good as if something was in already.
but what they can't challenge is we can, our recommendation on the DR permit, right? We make a recommendation on the permit. Okay, yeah, so we're not moving forward a motion here, we're just taking a temperature check, which is not doable. I didn't know that, but, you know, but I think this will kind of help set direction. Is that, or are you guys uncomfortable with taking a look? I mean, I don't know. I see there's some hesitation here.
No, I don't think so. I'm fine.
Okay.
voting?
Just
Well,
senior
again, this is
forum?
not, yeah, this is just community member, like where are
Just
we at?
senior.
Okay, so. Okay, I guess I'll start and go clockwise, just. So,
Hands up for A.
Four,
Hands up for B. C. D. Wait a minute, you look over to the camera.
wait, two? Wait, did you vote twice?
No, I-
No.
Well, I mean, I'm okay with C though. I'm okay with status quo too.
Okay,
I mean,
well,
I guess I could do status quo.
pick one, please.
Pick one.
Word, John.
I need somebody, I'm all alone.
I know, I'll support John. Because I'm okay also just leaving that.
please enter it into record. No, it's not low, no. Okay, well, so then, you know, obviously consensus would help, but look, now that we don't have it. How are we as a committee moving forward? Then you want to form a subcommittee to continue the discussion, I'll find if we can, or, you know, it'll be a repeat of what they did in 2019.
Right, I'm so glad
Evaluate
that,
that
because
stuff.
we've taken this temperature with this committee and it kind of followed what we did before. We should, put in something that brings these other two people in or the other, positions. And, kind of come up with that. I mean, it's all written, it's all ready to go, except for
Will you
I don't
get
know.
another, you know, get
incentive
another,
thing would be the only other thing I think that would help.
Yeah.
Is if we could incorporate some incentive for,
and I like what Moshe said about the FAA.
and that, yeah.
Yeah, like a solid
I'm not sure, like, where would you start, like, at 35?
I would wanna push it pretty high. I don't really.
Yeah, you could win us over with some exception clauses and.
That's what I was gonna ask, is I know that that's your recommended, that's your position, but in terms of A being a possible thing that we move for as a committee, if there are certain things that we add into there, like incentives, you know, conditions that will reduce the onerousness of the storage poles, that's
My
something that.
main issue, the main thing for me is the wild card aspect for whether owner, builder, contractor, whoever it is coming in, there's this wild card aspect that you cannot get away from. When you design a thing, Mark, and you come in here, you can meet everything, you can take the blue book and articulate and do everything and draw what you think is a perfect plan, and you may get some pushback, you may be dropping.
Okay, John,
rejects,
again,
you
we're
may
talking
be-
about story poles, not about the whole city. or
So not
Right.
scale only.
Yeah,
No,
sure.
I get that, but the thing is.
So that-
The scaling and the story, that all ties into the same.
The subjectivity.
It's all,
It's
it's
the
all
subjectivity, the
subjective.
scaling.
Yeah.
No,
it
it
is.
wasn't.
Okay, so.
Anyway,
if
we're
I-
not gonna solve that.
Yeah, then we're gonna try to.
Then
do
you
it.
But what I'm saying is to get me on board with story polling, I need to understand why it's required in the first place and what are we doing? Like, why are we
Because
forcing people to story poll?
the standard says you have to be in scale with the homes around you.
It doesn't say you have to be.
It does.
Yeah,
It's not,
It does,
Anyway.
it could be written in a better way, but it's
A
essentially.
much better way, because
Yes.
it's subjective, it's
Yes.
not,
Okay, well, I think we all agree on that.
right, so that's what I'm saying, is let's clean it up and get it where it's
Okay,
able to be interpreted and implemented in a fair way, that's what I need.
Something else has to go away for it to come in.
Yeah,
There's no way I can support story polls unless some other requirement, 1,000 cuts, I can't vote for 1,000.
yeah, I know it's hard to work with
I
that.
mean, just set a new session, set a different session to handle a lot of that.
Well, let's come up with some ideas by next session. Unless you want to have a sub meeting. Would you like this,
I'll be on a subcommittee.
okay, would you like to head it up?
Haven't I already done that once?
Maybe.
Maybe somebody else could head it up and it'll be work.
Maybe all the work's done, you're all set.
I only
Well,
spent
don't
years
help
of my life
pull up all
working on
this
this
stuff.
and nothing happened, you know?
Okay.
Then I'm gonna make a recommendation that if we form a subcommittee, that subcommittee has the authority to come up with a recommendation on behalf of the whole committee. Is that fair? Just so that we get participation.
Great.
If you have a particular viewpoint, you should participate, is what I'm saying. Is that,
Subcommittee in 2 weeks from today.
with the goal of,
No, you can't do 2 weeks, because you have to have notice, if you're gonna talk about it from, blah, blah, blah.
no, well, subcommittee work happens outside. That's subjected to
Quorum,
the.
if it's a meeting of the quorum, then in the past, we've always treated it as like a CDRC meeting and we've properly
I never got
noticed it. There are
paid for
people
this.
that may wanna speak on it, you can have.
For
comment.
subcommittee?
Yeah.
Okay, then,
You get paid.
Yeah, we did so many subcommittees on the guidelines and.
They don't get
it's
paid.
free, no, it's not paid. They gave us pizza.
You only get paid for one meeting
I
a
bought-
month.
okay, so with the recommendation, just in the interest of time, be that a subcommittee can meet, at November.
We'll do the same thing in the agenda.
Yeah,
in
and just with
November.
a subcommittee,
Okay.
and then it could be a more detailed discussion.
Can we push for it earlier?
I think
Right.
between now and November, a couple of things I'd like to see is, first of all, I didn't have time to fully read through all of the prior work, including the municipality. I would like to,
Try to dig it up, but I think.
yeah,
Well, we're just
some of
gonna-
it just
let's get
came
a-
in, like,
Yeah,
let's get
I'll
a-
find as much.
get a thread
about
on
it
it.
before you, you know, so just forward along as I can and
All
I'll
right.
find my notes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a game plan for moving forward, is.
Does anybody not want to be on the committee?
Yeah, be a subcommittee.
Can I just ask if it's a,
I don't.
is it,
No, I knew that, Paul.
am I allowed to be on a subcommittee that's representing the CDRC if I'm not on CDRC anymore?
It's public.
Like, subject matter
If it's
experts.
just a subcommittee, that's fine.
Yeah.
We can open it, well,
Camille can manage.
I don't know if
it.
she needs to lead it necessarily, but I think Katie, as a member of the public, can participate and.
Yeah.
Rely on her as a subject matter expert.
But
But
you're not fully
I wanna,
united.
I wanna rely on the planning department to tell us, what could we get rid of? If we put this in, the story poll requirement, where could we make it better and easier for people?
I think we have to make recommendations, though, right? I mean, like, they're,
I
like.
mean, look at the demonstration of skill policy now, like they have to submit it 15 days in advance, they have to print it out, put it on a poster, well, I guess that's it. And then there's also some accuracy checking, make sure the scale's all there. So then you wouldn't have to do that, you would just. Send pictures of the polls that are already erected, there wouldn't be like all that advanced stuff, you wouldn't have to submit it at the first part of the package.
Okay.
What
Let's
about
get that on the thread or something like that. Let's not start the committee right now.
We're not gonna problem solve fully here.
You got it.
But,
So
I
speakers
think,
list.
Oh, this is on the subject. I just want to make one comment. Story polls can always be done in certain situations. All right, which is coming.
We know.
thank you,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it could be dangerous. You could die from branches falling off, impaling you and so forth like that. So Sims are a better shot.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then a subcommittee, we'll meet in the November meeting, to discuss this. I just want to point out that, yeah, I'd like to come to some, conclusion, not to rush the process, but at the same time, I just don't want to have this topic come up anymore. So
Yeah.
that's
Right.
my last thought.
Okay. So agenda.
Great.
Okay, it's gonna be early. Do you want it before the CDRC meeting or?
I feel like it should be at the
April
end.
was saying, she wants things later.
I think it should be the last time on the agenda.
Last item.
Yeah.
If it's the last item, then it might not start on time. It's only-
Yeah, then it could run.
We usually
We're
just
good.
report this because then there's like a hard stop. And so it's not-
We'll push really hard for it to start on time.
Don't you work for yourself?
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I make a motion to conclude this item.
Those we take agenda.
Yes, for the roll call, Mark Stegmeyer,
Here.
John Stedman,
Here.
April Bingham,
Here.
Moshi Porter,
Here.
Mark Bing,
Here.
and James Bennington.
Down here.
Okay,
I don't get my hand. Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we can move on to item number 2. And James Bennington, as the community representative, would you like to introduce the project by reading the project description?
Yeah. Can I borrow your?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
All right, so this is, item 2.
Yes.
The ARP Paul LLC, Karen Wilkins, Paul Grader, file number PLN 242-790, location 15th Street, East Avenue, Montana. This is parcel number 137-015-191. Consideration of a design review permit recommendation to allow construction of a 2729 square foot, 3-story, single-family residence. Includes a 480 square foot attached garage, 771 square foot attached ADU, and legal 6,000 square foot apartment. Record certificate number plan 214-049, associated with staff level postal development permit and grading permit. Project includes significant trees, 302 yards to cut, 135 yards of fill. Property would be assessed via 290 foot roadway extension in 14th Street. PRC will not render a decision until we make a recommendation starting the project's compliance with design review. And the ADU is an administrative project that does not require review by the CDRC. An initial study mitigated negative declaration has been made available for public review. Planning staff will make a decision. The IS, DR, CDP, and grade date on or after October 31st, 2024. Project is not appealable to the commission, postal commission. Application being complete August 20, 2024. Project planner Olivia Booth.
Thank you for that. So is the applicant's representative present? If you are, would you like to come forward and describe the design element?
Karen Wilkins will speak for me in the beginning.
Okay.
She's the architect of record.
Hi, Karen, feel free to unmute.
Hi there, my name is Karen Wilkins and I'm the architect for Paul McGregor and this project. And we were here at the last hearing, and due to a problem with the mailing and letting constituents know about the hearing and having plenty of time for them to review it was a problem. So we're rescheduled today, and I believe everybody's had, a chance to review it. And also before we left the meeting, the hearing last time, we were given some pointers as to some things that the design committee wanted to us to take a closer look at and possibly change. And we did make those revisions. So we're happy to discuss those today as well. So we're ready to get started when you are.
Excuse me, Karen?
Yeah.
Karen,
Yes, sir.
can you speak up as much as you can comfortably?
Yes. Is this better?
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know if you heard me. Did you hear me? What I
Yeah.
said just a few minutes ago, or should I repeat myself?
No, most of you did, I think, right?
Okay.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, any questions from the committee members?
Yeah, can you just speak to how you address the comments that were made?
So, Paul, would you like to start with that?
Sure. So from the last meeting, what we were to look at was the back elevation. That you want a little more, projections from it. So you can see right there, northwest elevation, that she expanded the kitchen area down to the eating area to bump it out a little, give a little more pop to it. You also suggested that we remove the lights in the driveway. And there might have been like 2 other items, that was minimal.
There was the rails for the stairs.
Oh, the rail for the stairs, let's see that one, there you go, there's the rails.
Thank you.
And then I must say that the trees may not depict what's actually out there. And I'm sure everybody on this committee has looked at the tree report and seen what trees need to be removed in order to make this property buildable.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I guess I didn't notice the last time, maybe it's a different plan set. Is there a landscape plan? Or a
Yes,
lighting plan?
there's one on there.
What sheet?
You're not even included in this posted version. Was it revised from last time or is it the same as last
It
time?
was the same as last time.
Oh, it's the same as last time.
Yeah, I'm sure it's native plants.
So we can find the plans from the September hearing.
We got a paper version if you want to look at it.
Oh, the landscape plan?
Yeah, this is the printout from the last. So you can go through and take anything.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay,
Do you?
okay.
Are we ready to open up for a public comment?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're now opening public comment for item number 2. So the public correspondence for this project received prior to the meeting has been uploaded to the meeting webpage on the county's website and provided to the CDRC. So I have no speaker request forms in person.
Hey, Louis, I just want to mention that a couple of these are just posted within the last hour. Is that correct?
Yes, one was received at about 11:30 and sent to the CDRC members and also to our clerical person on the website.
You're gonna read those?
Let me pull that up. Here's the send. So this came in at what time? 11:26. So dear Coastside Review Design Committee and Steve Monowitz, the community continues to express concerns about this development. It appears that most of our concerns brought up over time and leading up to the DRC held on Thursday, September 12, 2024 have been minimized or ignored. I continue to challenge the negative declarations as we frequently seen endangered species, red-legged frogs, garter snakes, fauna, and the roaring riparian corridor and intermittent streams. The proposed project essentially will bulldoze at least 20 or more significant trees, and many are not even on the property. These trees are 75 years old and in good health. We will be losing 2 or more tons of carbon emission sequestration, just so one house can be built. I have questions, but the legal use of the paper about the legal use of the paper street, East Street to be used solely for private benefit without the consent of the adjoining property owners, and questions about the height, FAR, setback, and drainage. We submitted a certified biological report dated March 17, 2015, raised many concerns and negative impact of this proposed project by on the riparian corridor, buffer zone, wetland, endangered species, significant and heritage trees. It would appear that the site, due to the existence of riparian corridors, wetlands, endangered species, and sensitive habitats, would preclude development altogether. We presented at the MCC hearing on March 12th of 2015 with the community concerns. Midcoast Community Council's letter to Dennis Aguirre and Steve Bonowitz of SMCO on April 8, 2015 also summarized and documented many public and professional concerns about this project and urged the county to explore alternatives other than allowing development on this site. The California Coastal Commission's letter to SMCO dated June 28, 2016 reiterated many of the same concerns about significant negative impact of this project on riparian corridor, wetland, buffer zone, endangered species, hydrology, significant and heritage trees, along with many other issues. We questioned the assessment presented in your intent to adopt mitigated negative declaration. The report appears to be incomplete as it either ignored or minimized the numerous environmental and code concerns we've raised over time. The proposed project continues to present significant negative environmental impact and safety due to inadequate fire access that cannot be mitigated. The proposed project continues to be in conflict with the San Mateo County zoning regulations, particularly section 5651 Design Review District, and those are listed there. Were there any variances granted by the SMCO on this project and why? If so, please describe what the variances are and why the adjacent neighbors were not notified or included in making such variance decisions. Thank you for reviewing and mitigating these serious negative issues before SMCOG allows this project to proceed.
Thank you for reading it. But I think all of that is not in our purview.
Correct. So with that, we will move on to the comments on Zoom. John Q. Please begin by stating your name, address, and email address for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. This is John Kakunda. I live at 360 14th Street in Montera, jkakunda@gmail.com. I want to start by stating that I am well within the 300 feet of the proposed building, and I did not receive any notice of this in the mail to date. And I checked the mail again today. I'm just bringing this up as a technicality. I did end up hearing about it from my neighbors who did receive it, but when you add this to the problems that we had with the mailing last month, I just want to bring it to the committee's attention that we seem to have an issue with mailing where neighbors are not getting the mailing in time or at all. Something to look into in the future, please. But I did want to point out a couple of things here. One is that in the description of this build out, it states that there will be a removal of 18 significant trees. And while it may be true that 18 of the trees are significant, there are greater than 25 trees that will actually be removed, many of which are not even on the subject the property where the proposed building is happening. A lot of these trees are going to be bulldozed in a public access area just in order to be able to reach said property. And that has a pretty dramatic impact on the neighboring homes and the wildlife in the area. In addition, they're going to bulldoze what is currently a cul-de-sac and has been a cul-de-sac since it was first built in 1970. So for 54 years, the street has been a cul-de-sac. And now they are proposing to bulldoze it into a throughway, which changes the character of the entire street for all the neighbors, again, for the building of a single home. Another really just significant impact on the neighbors and on the character of the street itself. I also want to ask about the exemption from Coastal Commission. The site sits squarely in a scenic corridor, visible from the Pacific Ocean and from Highway 1. The County of San Mateo in the past had specifically stated that this lot and the ones that are in front of it going towards the highway are all within the scenic corridor, and therefore should any development should undergo a Coastal Commission review. I also want to point out that we just earlier had a very long discussion around story poles. No story poles were erected for this project. There were story poles. I heard Mr. McGregor say that it's extremely dangerous and someone's going to probably get killed trying to erect them. That is far from the truth. It's not that dangerous an area. There's some wildlife, but it's not dangerous. And story poles were erected more than 4 years ago when Mr. McGregor was proposing his original build out, which was much, much smaller than this current one. The current build out now is out of character with the street. The size of this thing and the height, it will tower above all of the neighboring houses. So there are just so many things going on. But again, in summary, impact to the neighbors and the character of the street, no story poles. It sits in a Coastal Commission corridor, should be reviewed by the Coastal Commission, and the height is, it's too high for the character of the street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, I will call Larry Jimenez. Please begin by stating your name, email address, and address for the record.
Hi, Larry Jimenez. Email address larry.jimenez@gmail.com. I sent a note in on October 8th. Did the CDRC have a chance to review that? And can that be read today?
You do have 3 minutes for your, it was provided to them, but you do have 3 minutes for your public comment.
Okay, I had visual, I had an overlay with the 40-inch cypress tree showing the drip line over the entire proposed driveway and the routing. So based on the protection plan in the latest plan for that tree, it shows not allowing any work to happen underneath the drip line. So by the fact that the driveway is underneath the drip line, and you can see by the pictures and the markups I provided, it's impossible to put that driveway in. And then also reiterating, John Kakunda's item on the story poles. Basically, every square inch of the 6,000 square foot lot is taken up and goes straight up. It looks right into our backyard. So we've had, privacy for years, and it's going to completely change the landscape and the feel and value of our property.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Well, I have no additional speaker requests online or in person, so I'll just wait a few moments to see if anyone else would like to speak on this item.
Who's David?
Hand is not raised. So seeing none, Chair, please indicate if you would like to close the public comment.
Close it out.
Okay, so we'll now limit the discussion between the committee members, staff, and the applicant.
Any other concerns, Boss?
So I wanna, I guess, say into the record that there's no landscape plan and there wasn't a landscape plan provided previously. I just checked.
There wasn't. Can we verify that with the project planner, Libby,
Yes.
and with maybe Karen or?
That'd be a planting plan, with
Let Karen speak up. She knows plans better than I do.
irrigation regulations.
Karen, can you please indicate if landscaping plans were provided?
I did not provide landscaping plans, but I believe that an earlier iteration of the plan submitted to the jurisdiction probably was done, but I didn't include it in this set.
They could be within the, I'm gonna check now.
And Dustin.
Yeah.
Isn't the neg deck from like 2016?
Yeah, but that was the previous design proposal, the owner is saying that he can stick with that plan. It'd be possible to introduce that now.
The 2016 landscape plan?
Yeah. I'll send you the link.
Okay.
But if there's anything you want to discuss, and then back to that.
So what do you wanna do here, Marks, without a landscape plan? Do you wanna kick it back, or you wanna further, or what do you wanna do?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say it's incomplete again.
Well, look, I found it, so hold on.
Okay.
But. So there's that, and then I think the. Tree, moving the road extension around the tree is not really in our purview. That would be covered in the negative deck or neg deck as well. But I do think maybe we just make a note to. That we're concerned about it.
Well, I guess as far as the landscape plan, I would say conditional approval and then approval by plan. For landscaping,
For the landscaping.
yeah, and let's just,
Go to the last page. It's, I mean, I think you can still review it. We still have half an hour on the
You
side.
sent a link?
all right.
I have it here.
No, the link I sent you in the piece.
Oh, Teams.
Yeah.
Okay.
But.
Is it in the brown?
Yeah, right?
We bring the Brown Act?
No, we sent a link of the neg deck on this agenda.
Oh, here it is.
The neg deck is part of this project. So to reference something with the neg deck is not.
And then this.
Go to the last page. Yeah.
This
and
was
you
done
can-
by the previous designer, shall we say.
Okay,
That's why I brought on architect.
but the,
It's a house, but then the ADU is kind of displacing some of this.
We
a
can.
lot of it, yeah,
But is the house generally in the same place?
it is.
Oh, the house is
Okay.
in place.
Perfect.
Yeah. So the ADU displaces some of this. And you're saying that's acceptable from the county?
Is ADU's,
ADU
On
is
the
at the
north-
top, at
the
the
north
top.
side?
Yep,
So
north elevation.
the landscape plan only has a few little scattered bushes, which,
It has 5 Monterey cypress. Up there,
oh, those are setups.
yeah.
Okay, so, which of these are being removed?
Look at the plan and it'll show you,
Probably those middle three, I think.
I would imagine so.
I guess, and then the rest is
Hold on,
all,
go back up, there's an existing plan for the trees. Go up one more. Right there, okay, so you can see where the house is gonna sit within that area, so I see two trees that are gonna be removed. Where the ADU is gonna go,
and then you have like mulch or something in the rest of it?
there was mulch, and there's really nothing growing underneath the drip lines of the trees. It's like vacant, there's
Yeah.
nothing.
And I would call that area the ADU area anyway, like
So-
landscaping is not required for an ADU, but there is some perimeter landscaping the potato vine.
This tree, ADU, right in here, and you'll see that in the next plan. Which is proposed.
And so adding these tree removals,
Are those tree
I mean,
removals
it's-
or are those trees not gonna be planted? I thought those were trees that are not gonna be planted.
The trees that are gonna be removed within the ADU envelope,
it's
that
additional.
one there's two right there. Yeah.
Okay,
So the one behind it's gonna
So
remain.
we don't, CDRC does not have review.
Yeah, but just overall, right?
I'm just asking if it's a complete submission, I guess, like.
We have to close one eye to the ADU.
Well,
And
not-
anything
not-
associated-
For tree removal?
If the tree is being removed for the ADU, yes.
Okay,
But that's a different tree plan though, right? Or tree and landscape. I mean, sorry, I'm stepping.
So I would say that looking at this landscape plan, where the new stuff is going along the perimeter, the back of the house and along the perimeter of the property lines. That it can still be accommodated even with the ADU. Cause it's the potato vine along the left, along the. What do you call it, the west side and the north side?
yeah, but the 5 cypress trees that were providing privacy arguably are not there.
Okay, so you can require more landscaping at the back or.
I think we should.
those five cypress along the.
There's hop seed along the back of the house too.
Yeah, that's 6 feet tall. You're saying, those are cypress, they were gonna be. You want to put trees cypress over to the property line. You wanna move them back behind the ADU.
Yeah, I think so.
Still, is there still room to stagger them a little bit? What do you think?
Probably not. Like 5 feet or 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, adding. Adding some kind of landscaping on that north side, especially with the comment about privacy from the neighbors. Which it looks like was sort of addressed here with these big trees. And now. Because the trees are removed, I think we should add something there.
Have some behind,
Yeah,
you wanna make that a conditional approval?
condition of approval.
Yeah, and then just let the planning commission, the plans phase, review that.
Yeah,
Let's vote on that. You ready for a vote?
yeah, I mean, other than that, I think it looks
All right,
nice. What do you think?
I'd say we approve it.
Okay.
Good.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, second, sorry. Okay. Yeah. I was reviewing the, what should I call it? Color. Palette, material board.
All right, so that's what I have to, the change we got is we're gonna add some more trees behind you. North elevation.
Yeah,
Okay, so you good with that?
I'm good with that.
All right, that's it, that's our requirements.
Okay, so,
You all right with
would someone
that?
like to make a motion?
Oh,
Yeah,
as,
I make
as a
a
condition
motion
of
that we-
approval, no problem with that. I mean, I would like you to actually tell me what type type of trees or shrubs that you would like there?
Same ones, Monterey cypress,
No problem, and what kind of spacing?
uh, same spacing.
Only feet apart, because they do grow, you know, kind of rapidly, and they have a large diameter. When they get old, then they die.
I would just say to stick with the spacing indicated in the landscape plan from a negative declaration.
What, 10 feet apart? You want me to put like a shrub or a bush like you see on 92, that the one property that guy planted all these cypress 5 feet on center, and it grew up 20, 30 feet tall. And he's got all the pottery behind there and stuff like that.
I don't know if it's
Yeah.
your requirement to be that.
I'm aware of my
prescriptive.
surroundings.
Yeah, can we make a recommendation versus like make it conditional and that he works with the neighbor to figure out a privacy plan for the landscaping?
I'm willing to work with Larry, no problem.
Yeah, the conditional is that planning makes a final say on this.
I think, because of the proximity to the ADU, maybe like those junipers, because the cypresses are may affect the foundation over time. Due to the kind of constrained area, what do you think? I don't know. Well, junipers like provide screening, kind of look like cypresses, I don't know.
Did you want to provide like a kind of a type of what, like for privacy of size and,
A screening.
yeah, rather than
Yeah.
just specific
Yeah.
species?
Or even a number, because if they get really big.
Yeah.
I'm willing to do some kind of hedge or something like that.
I mean, nothing really grows below the cypress trees
Yeah, that is a problem.
besides cypress. Yeah, but I'm happy to say some kind of screening tree.
Yeah. Well, how about this, like what he said about the neighbor. And he can come back to the planning commission and sign off on the neighbor out there. How's that sound? Like gives both the neighbor and the owners.
How would you verify that?
Yeah,
You would just feel like.
He's gotta,
screening along the-
Larry's gotta send a letter, or somebody's gotta send a document to her that says we're good with it.
Mhm.
okay, I'm happy with that, but I think that should be a condition,
I do too.
yeah,
We're good.
not a recommendation.
I'm willing to do that at the north end and also going down, from north to south. So if the other neighbors' concerns are, you know, that we're gonna be looking in on them and they have an ADU down below in their lower section. I'm willing to put up whatever kind of trees you guys suggest where it grows in there, but it has privacy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just saying, I think the only thing that's gonna grow with the cypress trees is gonna be cypress,
So do whatever you guys would prefer. I mean, cypress,
but that's great. I think I'm happy to just hold the condition for the north side and then the other can be,
I'd be willing to do the same for the
that's
west
right.
side. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
So for the record, if we can have a motion with any conditions specified?
Motion is that the landscaping satisfies its neighbors to the north and south, is that all right?
Correct.
Do it. I'm both that we do that.
Wait, what do you mean north and south?
Just the north.
He's gonna talk to the neighbor, you want just the
No,
north.
but I think he's only saying confirmation of the neighbor to the north, not the neighbor.
Well, I'm willing to do it. Okay, to a buffer, so they can again, or vice versa. So via the condition, I'm not worried about that, but I don't think we have to consult with the neighbors board to do this. I'm doing this on my own. Unless you guys deem necessary.
I think it should be a condition that Camille receives a letter from the neighbor.
The neighbor to the north.
Yes.
Okay, only the neighbor to the north.
Yeah.
This is,
Just the neighbor to the,
The two neighbors, not the whole neighborhood.
just the neighbor to the north,
Just
just
the neighbor.
one. Yeah.
All right?
Yep.
Okay, in that case, I will move to roll call. James Bennington,
I vote that we approve that.
okay, Moshi Porter,
Approved
recommendation.
recommendation. I
Okay.
recommend.
Okay, great. This motion has passed. So next, this item will be reviewed by the planning staff for a decision at a later date.
Will adjourn.
When does the driveway get reviewed with the tree impact? Who reviews that and approves that?
There's a CDP, staff level CDP, where there's a deadline date to comment of October 31st. Just send that to Olivia Boo, the project planner.
Okay, because I haven't gotten an official response and know that your team has reviewed my email with the markups and with the mitigation plan for the 40-inch heritage cypress. So are we just?
The
I'm trying to-
project, the project planner has received that email.
Okay, I just want to make sure you're not just blowing by that and not responding to it and adequately addressing the concerns.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, just to address that, it's not really in our
Yeah,
purview.
we can't comment on that.
Okay, so what's that mean? So if the tree dies, falls on our house, who's responsible?
No, it just means that somebody else is responsible for reviewing that, which is Olivia Boo, the project planner, and you have until October 31st to provide any additional comments or.
Okay, I'm just gonna follow up now and ask for a response. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
So-
for your
Sorry,
input.
can we get can you spell the name and provide an email address?
It's in the
Olivia?
agenda.
It's in the agenda. Olivia Boo. Olivia is Olivia and Boo is Boo.
And her email address is in the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We still have one.
No, we have the agenda adjourned to 3:30.
Thank you.
Oh, we went to different houses.
Okay, so let us continue with item number 3. So agenda item number 3, April Bingham, as the community representative, would you like to introduce the item by reading the project description found in the agenda?
Yes, so, this is for First Avenue in Miramar, assessor parcel number 048014100, 048014110. Consideration of a design review permit recommendation to allow a 2-story, 2,560 square foot, single family residence, an attached 491 square foot garage, and a attached 800 square foot accessory dwelling unit on a 7,048 square foot parcel associated with a staff level coastal development permit. The Coastside Design Review Committee meeting today. ADU is a ministerial project that will not require review by the CDRC. The project requires minimal grading, no tree removal. The CDRC will not render a decision, but will make a recommendation regarding the project's compliance with design review standards. Planning staff will decide on the CDP and the design review permits later. The project is not appealable to the California Coastal Commission. Application deemed complete September 17th.
Thank you for that introduction, and I do see the applicant's representative present, if you'd like to go over the design elements of the project.
Yes, well, just a little story first. Javier Mercado is the owner of the property, and the neighbors to the north are behind me here, Linda and Richard. When Javier bought the lot, he really liked the house, which is east of this one, which we designed probably 15 years ago for the McReynolds. So then he found out that we were the architects, and he said, I want one sort of like that. But it's a completely different lot. It's a very long lot along the street and not very deep. So as you can see, it spreads out a long streetscape presently. On the right side is an ADU, an attached ADU, and it steps up as it goes out to the west. And it's a reverse floor plan. About 3 bedrooms down on the ground floor, master bedroom up over the garage. And the living areas where you see the chimney and the tall windows. It's an open plan living room, dining room, kitchen, with lots of glass facing to the west. And, that's it.
Floor plan, okay.
Very good. That would be the first floor plan. You can see the 3 bedrooms on the left side. The stairway going up to the living areas up on the second floor. The garage in the middle and the ADU on the right side, the east side. The street is a paper street. Who knows if it'll ever be paved, maybe, maybe not. So it's kind of an open space now to the east, which is nice. And to the west is an empty lot. And maybe that'll stay empty, maybe it won't, I don't know. If you want to go to the second floor. That's utility plan. One more. There we go. No, that's the first floor. This. Yep, there's the second floor. So you can see on the left side, the open plan, dining room, kitchen, living room. Small balcony on the west side, right to the left. Stairways going up in the northwest corner, going up to a roof deck. Which will afford very nice. And then to the right of the garage is the roof of the 1-story ADU. And that's pretty much it. You can see the nice articulation on the, if you want to go back to the elevation of the front of the house. And behind the house is actually more trees than you can really see there. Linda and Richard have, yeah. So that's a really nice backdrop for the house. And they've been living there for how many years? As long as I've been. 40 years.
Okay, with that,
Questions? Glad to answer.
so if no clarifying questions from the committee members, we can move on to public comment for item number 3. So we're now opening public comment for item number 3. So public correspondence for this project received prior to the meeting has been uploaded to the meeting webpage on the county's website and provided to the CDRC. So first, I do have one speaker request form. Linda Patterson.
So my husband and I, we are the people who live, have those trees and live in that big lot adjacent to it. And so I had some concern about visibility, so can I approach that screen?
Yes.
Point to it. So if you pull up to this one, so this is our property here. And we own half of First Street, that's the unpaved street here. So these trees, and we have a business here, it's Hastings House Weddings. So people get married on the property, and it's because of proximity to the ocean and the natural beauty that I've created through the landscape. So my concern was just that the whole thing about the business is that I provide this environment that's extremely natural, private, and we talked, Javier and I were just talking about these trees because they're significant and they do overlap that property. And if he is cutting, they might be impacted. So he did say to me in advance of the meeting that we could have an arborist come out and look. So there's concern that there's significant, maybe 75 to 90% of the tree is on that property. So there was concern on my part that the trees may die when they're cut. In order for, now it's not for the house to be built, it's just for him to have access all the way to the back. And he's in agreement too, so we could maybe, but I wanted to just express that. And then I had a little bit of concern about light reflecting, it's a white stucco. I mean, you can see this is a cottage, we have a cottage where an environmentalist, I really like natural kinds of materials, natural, and this is stucco, and it's, even though it's all white, it's still white, it's reflective. And the back is what I'm seeing, and it's massive walls and space. So we talked about possibly coloring the back, different color. I personally, just because I gave my opinion, personally would have preferred a more natural material, wood, shapes, that kind of thing, just to soften its face. But they like that building up by the highway, which is stucco. So that's obviously that's a choice. So those were concerns. And then I just talked to him about the possibility of us continuing to run our business. So having some sort of agreement with the builder on the days that we have weddings. We don't do them every day. We do them once in a while, that we might be able to say, we have a wedding this Saturday. And from 12 to 12:30, if you could just have the guys take a lunch break so that people could do their vows during quiet time. Those were really size, but it looks nice. It's just very big. It's gonna fill that whole space with a building that was a green belt. So, you know, I'm expressing that it's a big change. We've been on for years. But that's like, so, yeah, the color, size, the trees and noise during building. Those were my main concerns. Oh, landscape. I did see Jerry Whiting and I know him, and it's kind of a minimal landscape that I put in, right? Do you have other ideas? Because he's putting in like 4 trees. They're not substantial. They're slow growers. So any tree, there's a Metrosideros, there's the Ceanothus in the back, which is a slow grower, very small. And
The bottom.
the bottom, okay, it's the last one.
Landscape plan. It's either a tea tree or.
Yeah, so here's So here's a tea tree, which doesn't get that big, slow grower. These are Ceanothus concha, that's a bush, it's not a tree. The strawberry tree, there are Buddhists and the Metrosideros, we've got a couple of them here. But everything's gonna take a long time, it's very minimal compared to the size of the house. And maybe you have ideas to develop it later. He did, just quick.
Well, Jerry does that.
He does that, I know.
That's his style.
Yeah.
It's very- And his philosophy is, we'll just do kind of a minimum, because I think people really have to live in a house and on a lot. And that landscape ideas bubble up later on.
And I believe that too, because I'm a landscaper too. But maybe we could consider doing some, when we look at what's gonna happen with the trees. Some significant trees like this.
Sure, I'm open to that.
Yeah.
You know, we're kind of limited in that space back there. Obviously, because of the huge, tree growth. And also, we have that, we only have 20 feet back there.
Yes.
By lot, my parcel is only 70 foot deep. It's 100 foot wide, but it's only 70 foot deep. So we have to set back 20 from the back and 20 from the front, which left us only 30 feet of
Yeah.
building envelope to
Yeah.
build, which is the reason why we had to kind of spread it out a little. But, yeah, I mean, that's just minimal landscape.
It
Obviously,
is.
we'll be doing something else.
Yeah,
Okay, I mean, we maybe even increasing the size of our common fence, something like that.
yes, and also some of the trees are like 5 gallon, 15 gallon, we could do, like a 24 gallon or something, larger. Some of these back here 5. And,
Can I ask a clarifying, I'm sorry, it seems to conflict with the cypress footprint. How are they gonna plant?
this is the cypress footprint, this little wavy.
Exactly, so.
That's gonna be cut back, because
back.
the trees on the ground.
Okay, but there's no tree removal as a part of this proposal.
No trees on.
That's pretty far back.
Yeah,
Well, the survey shows that the trees are pretty far into the property.
the trees
The
that we're
drip
talking
line.
about are on
The
top.
drip line
But not
is,
the trees themselves.
I know, but that's a
Well,
far
they've been
chunk,
talking about pruning them back to a certain.
that
degree.
much. It's like 20
Not
feet.
all the way to the property.
Oh, some of those.
15 feet.
Well, the thing is, they're 40-year-old trees, so the limbs are huge, and, they're all planted on this side of the fence. They're on my property, but the limbs have come this way, and some of them are running horizontal along the ground. So we cut holes in the fence, we built around them. So that's what's showing, and Javier was saying they would cut those that are low to the ground
Okay, and
and then leave those that.
the above,
Yeah.
overhead, and these would be under that canopy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they.
Yeah, on the other
Oh, that's-
But streets, that whole tree line.
Yeah, we
that
can-
you see in the back,
We can try to take it back to, one
Yeah.
public comment at a time. Yeah. So thank you for your comments. We'll move on to the next, speaker. So Paul McGregor?
I kind of live in the neighborhood. Build and develop properties, Coronado, I have one that was approved by the planning commission a little while back and permits application right now, and I look forward to building soon. I built numerous homes on that neighborhood. I like the neighborhood. The design is good. Maybe the white is not what everybody wants. I'd like to see the, scale of, demonstration to see how tall it is versus a cypress elm. And, Linda's property, if you can pull that up, please. Where's the cypress?
Well, top left.
It's at the top left. You can see the plants come up way above.
All right, okay, those are all the
Property.
trees, those are the cypress behind it, all right.
Yeah.
So with that being said, the roof deck is on the tallest portion of the roof? Okay, and how do you access it?
Stairway, coming off the balcony in the second floor,
Okay,
the northwest corner.
and is there anything, glass handrails or anything up there to keep people from jumping off the roof?
No, we didn't put anything up there, we just gonna let them go.
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
Yeah.
You never know what's gonna happen. Okay, so with that being said, you know, Linda's really good at what she does as far as the trees goes. She's done a few projects she's helped me out with. So I would suggest that the neighbor works together with her to plant specific trees. I would say if you're gonna trim the cypress, an arborist obviously would be helpful because you don't wanna trim one side and not the other, because it's like a lopsided haircut. Don't wanna have that. And, the other thing I would recommend, due to the current road situation in Miramar, since we have a one-way, we have a lot of problems down there, the road's kind of washing out and the county's in the process of, dealing with it. I would like to see First Avenue run all the way through, because we need a place to be able to escape if we can't get off of Murata, because Murata becomes congested on the weekends. People walk around like zombies, they have no clue where they're going, they walk in the right of way, where I'm driving up and down in front of your place and all the way up, and they're oblivious. So if any kind of major catastrophe happens, it's gonna be hard to get out of there. It's a one-way street at this point in time, so.
And then once you get to Highway 1, it's even harder. But
Well, yeah, but at least the people from Cortez and can come through that. I don't think it's gonna become a thoroughfare, even though it's only 20 feet wide. But you have to have an escape plan, because the people of Cortez can also get to Alameda, but all those people in there, they're only faced with going north right now. They can't go to Medio.
But
So
they've sold half of the right of way to Linda.
you can blame the county for that, why not do that? It's not my job.
Right.
Well, so what, hey, sell it, they will $1 million, they get $1 million for that.
People, like.
So that would be my.
You could get the road past that bump that goes in, because there's still.
Well, you can get in there, yeah, it's a 20-foot, I mean, there's plenty 20-foot right of ways, crossways up and down, both sides and so forth.
But does First Avenue go all the way through? Is
Crossways go through, and then you
All
have
the way
those
to
other
Cortez?
narrow, yeah, a bunch of other narrow streets in the neighborhoods.
Okay,
Believe me, I built on
thank you for your comments.
it, yeah. But great design.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
So next we'll move on to the comments online. David, please begin by stating your name, address, and email address for the record.
Yes, can you please confirm if you're able to hear me well or not?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I attempted to earlier this morning or this day, and I'm in a location today that's very low bandwidth, so forgive me for not if it comes across bad, and I elected not to use the video since it's not available.
Yeah, we hear you.
My name is David Beaumont, and I represent two owners that are immediately adjacent, and the second one adjacent to the west of the property. I'll call west as being the ocean side of the property. And I'm here firstly to commend Ed and Javier on their design, wholeheartedly endorse that design, and it's typical of a context-sensitive design that I've seen Ed do on a number of projects on the coast over the years, so fully support that. I did have an important comment about the street that is adjacent to that, but prior to that, if you look at the plans, and again, perhaps because I'm challenged in this low bandwidth environment, I don't have any video. I can't see anything on the screen. I don't know why, but I do have the plans before me. So I'll orient you folks who can hear me to the upper floor of the reverse floor plan. And that is with respect to the adjacent property. There are two adjacent properties there, one of which, and they're different property ownerships, although most think of them as the same. They're actually separate owner and they're different persons. But the one that's further down is a visitor serving zoning. And so there's some challenges to be able to either merge the two, and obviously there has to be consent by the two owners. The reason I'm giving you that background is because there is the possibility to develop the one property that is immediately adjacent to Javier's, which you will see on your screens perhaps as a 25 by 71 foot property. And so it's not a concern, it's really more of an abundance of caution and I informed Ed earlier that the two windows on the second floor on your floor plan that where the living room is, that face to the west, there appears to be a small deck there to the side of that. The one that is furthest to the street perhaps would not be impacted at a 45-degree angle, but the second one, which looks to be a sliding window, I'm not certain. It's labeled number 127 on the upper story floor plan. That certainly would be impacted from a view perspective. And as others have said during the earlier hearing having to do with story poles, certainly private views are not protected, but we still like to collaborate and cooperate with adjoining owners. And so this is just being offered as a helpful matter to the owner and perhaps to the DRC committee as well, that second sliding window would likely not result in very good views once the property that's immediately adjacent gets developed. Obviously, because of its constrained challenges on the site, smaller, the setbacks would be at best 10 feet and likely less than that, because there are some provisions under the county code to be able to develop such a substandard lot. But even if we're successful with merging and creating the appropriate zoning, nonetheless, there would eventually still be something there blocking that view. So again, just to re-underscore that, that might be something that they may want to voluntarily look at, perhaps reorienting themselves as to what their expectations are and a view towards the ocean from that window. So that concludes.
All right,
Yeah, that concludes that part of it, and then the second element of concern is on.
David, your 3 minutes are up.
Oh, can I just make a comment about the First Avenue?
Sure.
Yeah, so we've had discussions with the fire marshal and the fire chief and CAL FIRE, and there's been a lot of community meetings in West Miramar owing to Murata Road. And First Avenue, at a recent meeting just had with the Director of Public Works last week, is still very much under consideration. Over 100 persons live accessible by the same width, 20 feet wide, and the crossway is just a few hundred yards to the east. And so there is, that remains as an important likelihood. That shouldn't change the floor plan. I think what Ed and Javier have put together is great, but it's something to be aware of, that there's a substantial chance of some type of use of that roadway in the future. That concludes what I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I have no additional speaker request forms in person, and I see no additional hands raised on Zoom. I'll wait a couple seconds to see if there's anyone else that would like to speak on this item. Okay, seeing none, Chair, please indicate if you would like to close the public comment period. Okay, with that, we will limit discussion between the CDRC members, staff, and the applicant.
One little question for planning team. We saw there's a 4-foot setback at the ADU. Is that's acceptable?
Yeah.
Cool.
I didn't have any questions. I only had a comment on the color choice, which I think there are plenty of white houses around that it meets the requirement to be in the style and character of the houses around it, especially with the White House on the same street there. But I did read in the, coming from the Mid-Coast Council, the concern also about the light and the reflection of that. One potential recommendation would be that, you know, there's various colors of white, and you could just use a different kind of saturation to ensure that there's, you know, as much light absorption as opposed to reflection, and that's consistent with the guidance of non-reflective exterior surfaces.
but just as a recommendation.
Yeah, I think that goes with what I was thinking too. I had that comment in my head and I was like, I think April likes White Houses.
I have a White House.
I remember having this conversation on another project that was white.
Technically, my house is gray though. It actually is a very, very lightly saturated gray, so it looks like fog. So it actually blends with the fog as opposed to reflects the color.
But I do think that the front facade is maybe a little bit more, well, it's really nice. It's really successful and I think it's really very interesting. The back is not as exciting, but I do think that one comment I had was, I felt like the bay window was a little random and maybe could be transformed into like a pop out like we're seeing on the front facade. Just to use the same language on the front and the back. Would that be something that you guys would be interested in, or? I'm happy to hear out.
There is a bay window coming out of the kitchen.
The kitchen bay window, yeah.
Is that the one that you're talking about?
That's the one I'm talking about. If that one could be transformed into more of a square pop out, like the one in front.
That will be a one-piece purchased unit.
Like a garden window.
It's like a garden window. So I'm sure, well, I think they're made at an angle.
They're all, well.
But they're different
there's a
shapes.
variety. It's a pre-manufactured all glass.
Would you be open to switching that to a more of an architectural pop out?
I guess it could. I mean, yeah.
I think that would
Certainly.
help with the variation.
The thing is, you never see two of them at the same time. You only have one's on the back, one's on the front.
Yeah, I know, I guess I'm addressing that, but I'm also addressing, the concern of the neighbor in the back. With the large white wall, I think that would help to stop a little bit of the light reflection. Especially because it's right there. I do think another thing to consider though too is that
It's actually more transparent than a built pop out, which doesn't have glass on the sides. It just extends out, it's cantilevered out and just got a glass. But the garden pop outs have 3 sides of glass. So it's, in a way, it's when you're standing at the kitchen sink and you can kind of look in 3 directions.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
And as Linda commented, I think more than likely what we're gonna wind up doing is painting the backside to address the reflective issue. Painting it a little bit darker, more of an earth tone color, so it doesn't reflect as much as the other 3 sides. I think that's probably what we're gonna do also.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe if you could talk about the design intent with the staircase going to the roof deck. It's ocean facing, it's pretty prominent and to me, it's not gonna, well, I personally, I wouldn't love the look of the staircase, from that, just for your own house.
Well, the thing is, you're not gonna be able to see it.
Oh,
It's covered up. You're not gonna see the staircase at all. If you're standing at the front of the street down.
The trees are right.
And in the back, you can't see the stairs from the back either. You can't see them from the side.
Okay, so on the ocean facing side, there's a tree.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
You're not able to see those stairs. You could see it on the picture there because it's from an angle that's above ground level from the front. But you're not really gonna be able to see those stairs if you're walking down the street.
Gotcha, okay, thank you. And the roof, deck patio, the sidewall, I appreciate you putting that. I think that's really gonna help in terms of. But that's all under 28 feet, right? Yeah, okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I also, another thing to note is that the north side is the north side, or the northwest side, and you got the trees there, so the tracking of the sun should be benefiting the neighbor's case in that you're not gonna get that direct beam reflection. So I think, I mean, I like the design. I think it's very nice. I think it works well with the neighborhood. I think we should do a condition. Or I'm happy to for it to be a condition or a recommendation of the color.
I was just gonna leave it a recommendation for the color, especially because he's already offered to potentially
Yeah,
paint the backside.
and I think the recommendation from us, I think, would be to do the full house.
The recommendation from us would be to choose maybe instead of this Benjamin, more white opalescence, which actually has some degree of reflectiveness in it, that they would choose a non-reflective color absorbing white, so it could be a different white. There are whites that will not reflect.
Just a softer.
More matte.
Yeah,
Yeah, more matte and, you know, with like a warmer white could, like mine's a grayer white, but you can use like grayish whites. I mean, the color of whites that are out there, as you know, are infinite practically, but there are definitely ones that won't reflect.
It'll definitely be a flat paint.
Yeah.
It won't be a semi-gloss or even an eggshell. It will be a flat paint, which diminishes the
Definitely.
reflection of the thing.
yeah,
But even with the flat paints, or you can choose ones that have,
less reflective.
less reflective, yeah.
Yeah.
And the paint, companies can tell you the degree of reflection that each paint will have. But I would just make a recommendation.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good with me.
Okay, then I vote to recommend, because we're only recommending, it's not an approval today.
Okay, would you like to detail the recommendation?
Yeah, the recommendation, as I wrote it, is to minimize reflective surfaces externally, choose a white color that absorbs light and minimizes concerns from the neighbor.
Okay, in that case, I will do a roll call. So April Bingham
Yes.
and Moshi Porter.
Yes.
So this motion has passed, and next, this item will be reviewed by planning staff for a decision at a later date. So that is the last item on the agenda. So would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I made a motion to adjourn.
A second.
And again, I'll do a roll call. April Bingham,
Yes.
Moshi Porter, Mark Dean.
Yes.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Is this the first? Leaving early?
This is a long meeting.
No overtime?